If you like the story, you can support the author on Patreon. Link is in the description.
Chapter 51, The Bitter Waters 4. Isaac. Isaac. Furina continued to shout for Isaac's name, hoping for him to respond or give a snarky remark like he usually does. But she was only met with the dead silence of the deep pit which he had fallen into. She and Clearind have already climbed up to stable grounds and are near the gate that they encountered. Clearind watched in silence as she looked at Furina's call for her assistant's name. However, she knows that his silence indicated that he either lost consciousness, sunk deep into the waters, or quite possibly. From the sound of it, the water below is flowing. That means he must have been washed away by now. Heaving a sigh of breath, she bent down and touched Furina's shoulder. Lady Furina, we should go back. Reporting this location should help us find Isaac. Furina's eyes continued to look down as she continued to listen to Clearind speak. At the end of the latter's sentence, the former shut her eyes for a moment before opening them. No. I know him. Standing up, Furina composed herself and composed her emotions. However, her face remained pale. He won't die from something like this. During their time of investigating, Furina had seen some of Isaac's abilities as well as his exceptional reaction to sudden situations. As such, she knows that his meticulousness would save him in one form or another. Looking down the deep pit, Furina contemplated for a few minutes before making a decision. I'm jumping down. I can't allow that, Lady Furina. Clearind rejected her idea without hesitation. Our main priority right now is to thump, asterisk. Before she could finish speaking, sounds of thumping rapidly approached from the gate which had opened. Lady Furina. Sensing something hostile approaching them, Clearind immediately pulled Furina to her. Bang, asterisk. Bullets shot out from the darkness and into Furina's position. Fortunately, Clearind reacted fast enough for her to narrowly avoid them. That's... Furina, who was suddenly attacked, looked at the gate which opened. It can't be. Soon, the figure that shot the bullets emerged from the darkness. Soon, the two women saw what it was. More specifically, what they were. Another army of clockwork mechs. Clearind clicked her tongue. She then took out her gun. Lady Furina, stay beside me at all times. Before Clearind could continue her sentence, a clockwork mecha resembling a dog pounced from all directions and aimed for Furina. Bang, asterisk. Clearind reacted quickly and shot the clockwork mechs down, however, soon, more of them replaced the injured ones. Before the two of them knew it, clockwork mechs emerged from all directions and quickly overwhelmed them in number. Lady Furina. Escape without me. Looking back at Furina, Clearind immediately ordered her to leave. However, as her eyes glanced over to Furina's figure, the only thing she saw was the unconscious Furina being picked up by a mecha. On her head was a bruise, a concussion for her to fall unconscious. Miss Furina. Seeing this, Clorinda's eyes widened. However, against Mika's from all directions, she wasn't able to escape from their never-ending encirclement. Miss Furina. Yelling, Clearind activated her visions and imbued her gun with elemental power, killing every mech in her path. However, the mechs were adamant in keeping her and Furina away, replacing those who had fallen in an instant. Soon, more batches of mechs resembling dogs emerged from the tunnel. The last thing Clearind saw before being surrounded by an army of mechas was Furina being dragged into the gate which they opened. As Furina was being dragged away, only the sound of metal getting crushed and destroyed echoed from the distance, as well as the sound of gunshots and thunder. Asterisk asterisk asterisk. In an unknown location. After an unknown amount of time. Isaac, who lost consciousness from falling, woke up dazed. Before he could think of anything, he suddenly opened his mouth and spewed out water. Blurg. Sea water escaped his mouth and hit the ground. After a few moments, Isaac coughed violently. What? What the hell? Isaac took a moment to recollect what happened. His mind was a bit groggy, but he was able to remember them. I remember. Isaac heaved heavily as he caught his breath. I tried making dendro vines to hold on to. But my momentum just made them snap the moment they materialized. It was inevitable. Vision holders rely heavily on their ability to muster elemental energy to use their elemental power. As for Isaac, well, he hasn't been using his dendro vision that much, as such, he wasn't quite proficient in mustering and manipulating elemental energy. Shaking his head, he looked up to make a sense of his surroundings. Where am I? He looked around, only to see what seemed like rotting wood around him. Looking down, he saw that he was currently sitting down on the same decaying wooden floor. From what Isaac saw, he made a guess. Is this a cabin? He asked himself as he looked around. Just then, he noticed something off. Wait! His vision and gun weren't with him. They were both strapped to him, so they couldn't have possibly been taken away by the water. Noticing this, Isaac tried to move his hands but to no avail. He looked behind him and saw that his arms were shackled behind his back. Clang! Clang! Isaac tried his best to break out, but the shackles didn't budge. No way! Seeing this situation, the perceptive Isaac quickly realized what kind of situation he was in. I was captured. Correct. Just then, a deep voice echoed in the cabin. Isaac moved his eyes and looked at the source of the voice. His eyes landed on the cabin's wooden door, and the figure that opened it. The man at the door stood still. He was wearing a black robe and held a cane in his hand. The most noticeable feature about the man was his clown mask. Oh, for God's sake! Quickly realizing who it was, Isaac's face turned gloomy. Honestly, I'm surprised. The man with the clown mask spoke in the same monotone and deep voice. Whether you came here bravely knowing that it's a trap, or just stupidly dived in. The man walked over to Isaac and stood in front of him. You and the Hydro Archon. Don't think I don't know your involvement in Spina di Rosala. You two have been quite the thorn in my back, you know. Isaac remained silent the whole time the man spoke. After he finished speaking, Isaac opened his mouth. So you're the one behind the synth distribution. Indeed. The man chuckled in a deep voice. You may call me the masked clown. Hearing this, Isaac's eyes widened before curling up a smile and bursting into laughing. Ha ha! Ha ha! Ha ha! He continued to laugh as if he had heard the funniest thing in his life. It was a joyous and pure laugh, devoid of any falsehood. It was a genuinely gleeful laugh. Yet it sounded eerie. The self-proclaimed masked clown watched as his hostage laughed hysterically for a minute or two, never letting out a sound. After what seemed like minutes, Isaac's laughing finally died down and he once more looked up at the masked clown in front of him. So, the infamous masked clown is the synth manufacturer. As he spoke, he kept subtly fidgeting as if he was overwhelmed with joy and couldn't stop internally laughing. I'm guessing this is the part where you tell me your grand plan. His eyes moved to the masked clown's figure. You are one happy fellow. The masked clown remarked. But you are correct. Like any villain in an opera, I would now divulge my most evil plan to you. How comedic, Isaac said sarcastically. Well then, I'm listening. The masked clown turned around and slowly walked further away from Isaac. Do you perchance know about the prophecy? That everyone would be washed away and be dissolved, and only the Hydro Archon Furina would be left behind, weeping on her throne. Isaac maintained his casual smile as he recounted. However, his trembling eyes and eerie smile made it seem like he was losing his mind. Yeah, I've heard it a lot of times now. Good, that saves me the trouble, the masked clown said in a deep voice. Did you know that that prophecy is true? Too accurate, might I add. That we would quite literally be washed away. As the masked clown said this, he suddenly walked to a table and placed down a leather pouch from his robe. The masked clown opened the leather pouch and took out a series of bottles, as well as a syringe. There were many legends in Fontaine and one of them was about a certain liquid. The masked clown spoke in a deep tone. It was a special type of liquid that, once touched by a Fontanian, would dissolve them into water and return them to the sea. It was called primordial sea water. As the masked clown said this, he suddenly took the syringe and filled it with a sparkling liquid. The liquid that was poured glistened in both the light and dark. It was as if it could shine in the void, and stand out in the light. Then I'm guessing. Isaac saw the masked clown's actions, however, Isaac remained calm on the outside. You'll silence me with that. The masked clown didn't answer Isaac and continued to fill the syringe. After a few moments, the syringe was finally full. The masked clown then finally decided to speak up. I've been investigating you, Isaac Alder. You might seem like an ordinary barista, but your keen observational abilities can land you in any investigative career. You deserve my praises. As the masked clown said this, he slowly turned around. However, there truly are times when one fails, no. What do you? Isaac wanted to ask what he meant when he was suddenly interrupted. I've been investigating this liquid, you know. Suddenly, the deep voice of the masked clown started turning erratic. To save all of us, to save our loved ones. For years, I've experimented with it, but all of them yielded barely any results. The masked clown said with a furious voice. The only good thing that came out from experimenting with all those women I took was perhaps kidnapped women. The serial disappearances case. Isaac said with a low voice. After saying this, Isaac smiled. 3 infamous cases in a row, amazing. You know, for a supposed savior, you sure do kill a lot, and for what? Isaac decided to provoke him. Little to no results. The masked clown heard this and calmed himself down. Composing himself, the masked clown cleared his throat. That may be so, but that's because the specimens I've worked until now were just mere mortals. If I were to stand a chance in bringing back people dissolved by the water, then I must take my experiment to greater heights. The man said as he raised his deep voice. Hearing the masked clown's words, Isaac, who was perceptive of hidden meanings, instantly recognized what he meant. His eyes widened and his mouth opened in disbelief. You don't mean? Haha. Seeing Isaac's expression change, the masked clown laughed. That's right. For me to have this opportunity, I intentionally placed key locations around this area to lure in the two of you. The masked clown said, back to his deep monotone voice. This was all to lure in the being above us mortals and the one who didn't listen to my pleas. Furin de Fontaine. Boom, asterisk. As he said this, the cabin suddenly collapsed, and he was exposed to the outside. However, it seems like they were still inside a cave. Isaac took this opportunity to look around, then he saw it. Something he didn't want to ever see in his life. Strapped on a bed, Furina was lying unconscious. Hanging above her was a syringe filled with primordial sea water. For a moment, it was as if something had broken inside Isaac and felt like time had stopped. Chapter 52, Your Smile 1. Hey, do you mind if I ask a question? On a bright sunny day, Furina got curious. What is it? Isaac, who was eating an apple as they walked, glanced at her figure. Would you still not consider becoming my official servant? Furina said, keeping up her pace. You don't have to do much anyway, moreover, what you would do is no different from what you're doing now. You'll merely follow me everywhere, do tasks I assign you to, and brew and cook for me. As she said this, her face turned, and looked at Isaac. It isn't demanding at all. Sounds like a dream job of many, Isaac softly smiled. However, I told you many times, Lady Furina, glancing back at the road in front of them, Isaac heaved a soft sigh. I'm already satisfied with my current job. And, to be honest, Isaac contemplated for a moment before shaking his head. I much prefer to not be around you. What? Hearing Isaac's words, Furina halted on the spot. She then looked at Isaac with bewildered eyes. What do you mean? Oh, don't misunderstand. Realizing that he used the wrong words, Isaac quickly tried to fix it. What I meant is that your status as a god should not have a mortal constantly lingering around her. You fool! Furina subtly bit her lip and did not let Isaac see it. As the god of justice, having a mortal assistant by my side at all times is a common occurrence. Hearing this, Isaac took a bite of the apple he was eating before smiling. Gulping down, he spoke with a soft smile. I know. But it's not just the matter of becoming your assistant, is it? Isaac's words struck Furina's ears and she looked back at him with slightly surprised eyes. What? Seeing her reaction, Isaac burst into chuckling lightly. Haha, it looks like I hit the bullseye. Composing himself once more, he slowly walked past her and let out a small sigh. Well, who knows? My mind might change one day, but for now. He then turned his head and looked back at her with a genuinely sincere and soft smile. For now, I'm just happy to see you. Not as the god of Fontaine, but as who you are. As he said this, the wind blew from a certain direction, bringing forth a warm breeze that swayed both of their hairs. Along with it was a crisp scent of nature. Furina looked at Isaac in front of her as her heterochromatic eyes reflected his figure. She wanted to persuade him more, but her words somehow struck something inside of her that made her words get stuck in her throat. It was a warm sunny day that day. There were barely any clouds, and only the green grass that stretched far and wide and the blue skies surrounded them. It was a serene moment. Asterisk. What's wrong? Seeing Isaac turn silent, the masked clown got curious. As if mocking him, he chuckled with a deep voice, "Is perhaps seeing the god of justice broke you? Oh, how pitiful! Don't bring her into this." Suddenly, Isaac interrupted the man's words. His face looked up to see the masked clown. "Let her go." "Ah, what a great expression you have." Seeing Isaac's face, the masked clown dryly clapped his hands. "Worry? No, it's more like rage." Isaac's normally flaccid deep amber eyes, which gave off both warm and eerie vibes on those who stared upon, were now devoid of anything humane. His widened eyes looked as if they wanted to crawl out of his eye sockets and find various ways to mutilate the masked person in front of them right now. Coupled with his current outfit, Isaac looked a bit too close to a certain good hunter who hunts relentlessly. The masked clown stared at Isaac's eyes, and, for the first time in 20 years, he felt a shiver run up his spine. A cold sweat ran down his head, but the masked clown merely shook it off and composed himself. Amazing! Such profound raw emotions waiting to burst out. Good. Good. The masked clown laughed. He then turned around and took something. "For such a wonderful sight, I shall reward you." The masked clown then turned around, this time, holding a syringe filled with liquid. "Before you dissolve, I shall let you experience a bit of happiness. No. I'm sure you already know the effects of synth." As the masked clown said this, he approached Isaac and held the syringe near his arm. "Just about this dose can make you experience euphoria beyond imagination." Looking at the syringe getting close to his arm, Isaac squirmed his body and struggled, not letting the needle touch his skin. "Rowdy!" Seeing Isaac's desperate efforts, the masker clown clicked his fingers, and soon, clockwork mechas resembling dogs appeared. "Don't let him struggle." Chomp! Following this command, the clockwork mechs resembling dogs immediately bit down on Isaac's limbs. Isaac felt the immense pain from the sharp teeth of the mechs and wanted to yell, but he controlled himself. He focused all of his energy on trying to avoid the needle at all costs. He wanted to use everything in his arsenal to try and break out, but his Serenity system was only that it didn't sell anything that could help him in this predicament. In the end, all his efforts were futile. Ugh! Soon, the stinging sensation of a cold needle penetrating Isaac's skin was felt. "No! No! Don't worry now." Seeing that the synth successfully entered Isaac, the masked clown chuckled deeply. "From this moment, just treat everything like a hazy dream. A euphoric hazy dream." After saying this, the masked clown ordered the mechs to stop biting Isaac and broke his chains, letting him go. Thud! Asterisk. Isaac fell to the ground with not much strength left. No. Not long after the drug was administered to him, Isaac immediately started feeling the effects. His senses turned sluggish and it was as if his perceptions were being muffled. His groggy deep amber eyes looked up where Furina was, only to see the masked clown walking beside her, proceeding with his experiment. At the thought of Furina getting dissolved, Isaac's mind raced. He can't allow that. He must not allow that. He will never allow that. Thud asterisk. Isaac's mind raced so fast, that it was as if the world halted and became frozen. In this world where time did not move, multiple thoughts entered Isaac's mind. If your one true wish could be granted, what would it be? Just then, Freminet's questions resounded in Isaac's mind. To live a comfortable life, Isaac vaguely remembered his answer. To give peace to troubled minds. Will you fight for your wish? Freminet's words continued to echo in his mind. Of course. Apart from her, no one else knows about her troubles. Isaac didn't even know if that was the answer he gave. I will let her know that she can still rest for tomorrow. Finally, Freminet's last question dropped. What would you do if your wish is lost? As the last question drifted to Isaac, he fell silent. However, after a second, he smiled. Of course. Suddenly, memories of the times he spent with Furina flashed through his mind. He remembered all her smugness and boastfulness, as well as her pain and the tragedy that she hides behind a mask. She was suffering, but for her people, she continued acting. Every day, for the past 500 years. Knowing all these, Isaac wanted her to be happy. But not the point that it will destroy her progress. He only wanted to maintain all that was beautiful about her. Of course. Having thought of all of this, perhaps it might be because of the drug, but Isaac smiled softly. I'd fight for it. Over and over again. To let her know that someone acknowledged her pain. That's right. That was his first and utmost goal ever since he woke up in this world. He wasn't a spotlight taker, nor did he want to help the traveler. Since the beginning, he always wanted one thing. Serenity. Midnight. Notice. The main quest, Pious Believer, has now reached its completion. Rewards are now being distributed. Notice. Rewards are being altered according to the host's performance. Calculating rewards. Just then, a series of notification windows appeared in front of Isaac. His diluted deep amber eyes focused on each word until finally, the last few windows popped up. Complete. New reward. Evernight. Name, Evernight. Type, Skill. Description. Effects, for 30 seconds, able to use a portion of the authorities relating to the darkness, dreams, concealment, horror, and misfortune. Note, can only be used once a week. Warning. Unknown side effects might occur after use. Please use with caution. As the notifications appeared, the moon outside shined brighter. The moonlight had always been beside Isaac all along. His guiding moonlight. Asterisk. 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 As the masked fool was just about to begin his experiment, he suddenly noticed something. Turning his head, he looked at where Isaac was. He expected him to be in a hallucinative state, writhing out in pure euphoria. However, what he met was something else. Something that shouldn't have been possible by any means. Standing in the same position he was in, Isaac's figure had trouble standing still, with his left leg slightly drooping down as his head looked upwards. As he continued to look upward, his face suddenly broke into a smile. That smile wasn't gentle, soft, or sincere. Instead, it was horrific. At that moment, something changed about him. It was as if Evernight skill activated. It was as if it was someone else entirely. You. The masked clown, who saw this, felt horror. It wasn't simply being scared, no, it was pure genuine horror from the depths of his consciousness. Fear overrode everything in his body at this moment. Every fiber of his being was telling him that that man had changed. Hey! Just then, Isaac's voice escaped his mouth as he eerily giggled. Do you believe in Serenity? Attack him! Sensing something was off, the masked clown immediately yelled to the clockwork Mikas around to subdue Isaac. No matter what. Kill him! Realizing that Isaac's potential danger rose, he did not want to take any risks. He then pointed at a mecha. You. Get a bucket of primordial seawater and pour it to him. Hurry! He was panicking. Never before had he felt this kind of horror in his life. As he commanded every arsenal he had in a hurry, he suddenly heard Isaac chuckling. The masked clown turned his head to look at Isaac and saw him looking back at him. I knew it. As Isaac spoke, the temperature suddenly dropped to a drastic state in an instant. In the masked clown's vision, darkness suddenly emerged from Isaac and attacked the clockwork Mikas that were approaching him. The darkness materialized as strands of hairs that attacked and strangled the Mikas. Soon enough, only chaos was left behind. The darkness then quickly changed, enveloping the two of them, and leaving everything outside. You! What is this? Panicked, the masked clown looked around frantically as he tried to make sense of this. What have you done? He looked back to Isaac, however, the man wasn't there. He had disappeared. Just then, he felt pressure around his shoulders get heavy, as a cold sensation spread throughout his body. Serenity truly is the only escape. As these words fell, Isaac suddenly appeared behind the masked clown and pressed down on his shoulders. Isaac's face then turned to him and the two looked at each other eye to eye. His bone-chilling eyes devoid of any life and his horrific smile were all that the masked clown met. Don't you think so? Vakar. Hearing his name, Vakar wanted to react shocked, but before he could do so, he was suddenly swallowed up by the darkness around them. He didn't even have the chance to scream. He simply got devoured by the darkness around them in silence. Soon, the dark world disappeared, and Isaac returned to the real world. However, only Isaac remained. Vakar had completely vanished as if he was erased from reality. Skill has reached cooldown. Adverse side effects, immense fatigue and hypersomnia statuses are now in effect for 48 hours. Huff. Huff. Soon enough, the effects of the Evernight skill instantly wore off, and Isaac, who used it, quickly felt the side effects weighing down on him. HMGH. Just then, Furina's whimpering drifted over to Isaac's ears. His fatigued eyes then drifted over to Furina. Furina, who had been unconscious until now, opened her heterochromatic eyes. Where? Ugh! She felt a sharp throbbing pain in her head as she tried to stand up. Fortunately, Valkyr had patched her bruise up. Her bed straps had also been slashed away by the darkness that emanated from Isaac earlier. Furina. Suddenly, Isaac's weak voice drifted over to Furina. He walked towards her weakly. Isaac. Turning her head, Furina instantly recognized who it was. She had never been happier hearing that voice. However, when she looked at him, she discovered something. Wait. You. I'm glad. Isaac tried to stand beside her, but his legs were already trembling. Even so, he continued walking towards her. Finally, the two were beside each other. You're safe. Isaac's tired face and the horrible-looking state he was in instantly caught Furina's attention. Seeing this, she became severely worried. You. What happened? How did you? Isaac didn't know if it was because of his side effects, or perhaps because of the synth effects, but at this moment, he just let his body move on its own. His head lowered and got close to Furina. And soon, the two connected. Furina, who was greatly worried for Isaac, was dumbfounded by his sudden action. A red hue suddenly spread throughout her face before she even knew it. Both of them stayed connected for a few moments before Isaac finally parted with her. With a flustered face, Furina looked at him with a flushed face. What are you? Thud asterisk. However, before she could finish speaking, Isaac's body suddenly lost all its strength and fell down. Isaac. Asterisk asterisk asterisk. A/N. Isaac might have fallen asleep, but don't fall asleep on me just yet. We're approaching the end of the volume, lads. Chapter 53, Your Smile Too. How heartless of you. It can't be helped. In an endless plain of white roses that blanketed the ground for all the eye could see, Isaac stood silently as he watched two figures converse. The first figure resembled a tall woman, while the other was a man. The most noticeable thing about the former was her witch hat. You know. As the witch's knight, you're always welcome for another tea party, you know. The woman spoke gently at the man as if a mother comforting her child. However, the man shook his head. I can't go back now, miss. Irminsul is in a critical state. I must be the sacrifice who would mend it. You little. There you go, lying through your teeth again. Hearing the man's words, the woman sighed helplessly. She then looked at him with worry. You and the Queen Arayani would go together, won't you? The woman then smiled bitterly. The others would be sad. Some might notice the change, but they won't be able to trace the change. All they would know is that Irminsul has been altered and Tivet's fate changed. She added. You mean N? The man noticed her subtle hint of someone. However, he only shook his head. She would without a doubt be the first to notice. However, I already made up my mind. I won't lose much. Just myself. Looking at the man's eyes full of resolution, the lady got silent for a while before breaking into a soft chuckle. Fine. Her eyes then looked at him once more. You have always been a guardian. If we one day meet again, I hope you've already lived the serene life you always wanted. She then approached the man and hugged him. War wasn't meant for you, it never was. Now that you've found your goal, pursue it, my sweet child. Crack asterisk. Watching the scene play in front of him, the world in front of Isaac shattered like a mirror, hitting the ground, breaking off into countless pieces. Asterisk asterisk asterisk. MGH. Isaac, who had been peacefully sleeping, suddenly showed signs of waking up. His eyes slowly opened, adjusting themselves to the light in the room. Soon, his familiar deep amber eyes fully opened. He stared at the unknown ceiling in front of him, still a bit dazed. Outside, he could barely hear the chirping of birds. Where am I? You're awake. Suddenly, a deep voice came from beside Isaac's side. You could rest a bit longer if you wished. Isaac, who had just woken up from what felt like a long sleep, wanted to jump up in surprise. However, he didn't have much energy to do that. As such, he only moved his eyes and looked at the side of his bed to look at who was with him. Seeing who it was, Isaac was momentarily surprised before composing himself. Monsieur Nouvelette. Sitting beside him, the impartial Chief Justice of Fontaine was quietly holding a glass of water. On his other hand was his cane, which he always carries. You've been asleep for 2 whole days now. Seeing Isaac look at him, Nouvelette struck a conversation. Are you all right? I feel refreshed, good as new even. Isaac found an opportunity to lightly joke. He then mustered all his strength to sit up. Careful now. Seeing him sitting up, Nouvelette quickly gave a reminder. The health professionals examined you and found that you were extremely fatigued and your body pushed to its limits. If Lady Furina hadn't dragged you and regrouped with Clear and in time, you might have fallen into a much more critical state. He added with his eyes closed. Furina. Hearing her name, Isaac's vague memory of what happened flashed through his mind. I only remember activating a new skill. And then? Isaac had trouble remembering certain aspects of what happened, and every time he tried to remember, it was as if a portion of his memories were concealed. After a while, he decided to give up on remembering. He then focused on other matters. Lady Furina. Is she all right? Apart from a concussion, she's perfectly fine. Nouvelette nodded calmly. Though, she does need to stop making public appearances for a while and recover. That's good. Hearing that she was safe, Isaac exhaled softly as he comfortably leaned back. Looking at Isaac's gladdened face, Nouvelette observed him for a moment before opening his mouth. She wept. Hearing Nouvelette's words, Isaac lifted his head and looked at him. What do you mean? She wept for you. Nouvelette's gentle and dignified voice once more fell on Isaac. During the time you were asleep, she stayed by your side and wept. As Nouvelette's words reached his ears, Isaac couldn't help but fall silent for a moment or two. He then decided to ask, where is she? She's recovering not too far from here, Nouvelette responded calmly. His eyes then opened, revealing his dark blue draconic eyes. However, before you meet her, I have some questions for you. Of course, go on ahead, Monsieur Nouvelette. Isaac nodded. In front of this dragon sovereign, all he could do was follow what he said. What do you want to ask? I want you to tell me everything that happened in that cave. Nouvelette cradled his glass of water as he spoke. Down to the minute detail. Of course, Isaac wasn't surprised by this question. He already knew that he'd be interrogated, he just didn't know that Fontaine's highest judge would be the one asking questions. Isaac then began recalling what happened. First, when I fell down the trap, I fell unconscious. By the time I woke up, I was already captured by someone. You were captured? Nouvelette inquired deeply. Yes, Isaac nodded. I didn't recognize his face because he wore a mask. I only know he was a man based on his voice. Continue, Nouvelette said. Isaac nodded and continued talking. The man then walked up to me and started talking about his plans. He was like a madman. He said something about the primordial sea and how it ties to the prophecy. Isaac continued to fabricate his lie. He then proceeded to explain how he wanted to experiment with the sea water on a god. The primordial sea. Hearing this term, Nouvelette fell into deep contemplation. However, this didn't stop Isaac as he continued telling his fake story. Maybe because he thought it would be fun, but he injected me with a dose of synth directly in my bloodstream and watched him experiment on Furina. After that, everything went blurry. He said with the most believable face he could ever hope to muster. It felt as if I was lost in a fog, with occasional lights appearing and giving glimpses to what was actually happening. And from what I remember. Isaac then pretended to fall into deep thinking before nodding to himself. Yes, I vaguely remember fighting the man with another person. There was someone else. Nouvelette got curious and raised an eyebrow. Do you remember who they were? That's right, Isaac nodded without meditation. I still remember how that person looked like. He suddenly appeared out of nowhere and, together with me, fought the person who captured me. I believe he said his name was. Isaac then pressed his temples and looked as if he was forcing himself to remember. Yes. His name was Germain. What? Isaac found an opportunity to raise his image and he wasn't going to let it go. Germain. Nouvelette repeated the name and remembered it. I don't believe I'm aware of anyone by that name. Do you know more about them? Apart from his gold-rimmed glasses, I didn't remember his face much. Isaac shrugged. Again, I felt very foggy. That's lamentable. Nouvelette sighed deeply that he couldn't get more information. Do continue. Isaac nodded and did just that. We continued to fight the man and his Mikas, but as time went on, I started to get tired, possibly from the synth side effects. In the end, before I could kill the person that captured me and Furina, I was suddenly blinded by a thick fog, and before I knew it, the man named Gehrman took the culprit away. He shook his head in regret. That was pretty much all that happened. Isaac looked back to Neuvillette with sincere eyes as he finished speaking. In truth, Isaac wanted to tell Neuvillette that he killed Walker, however, that was suddenly ruled out when a new notification window appeared in front of him a moment ago. Notice. One soul is currently trapped in the darkness of your Evernight skill. You may release them, keep them, or enslave them as you wish. As it turns out, Isaac still had uses for Walker. Such an opportunity is hard to come by, as such, he would exploit it to the fullest. I see. Having absorbed all of Isaac's story, Neuvillette stood up. Thank you for your cooperation, Sir Isaac. Thank you, Isaac said as he slowly got out of bed to stand in front of Neuvillette. As for Lady Furina, I believe she was at the rooftop, looking at the drifting clouds. Neuvillette lightly nodded. Thank you, Monsieur Neuvillette. Isaac thanked him sincerely before weakly rushing out of the room. Neuvillette watched him run comically and couldn't help but contemplate deeply. As he stared at Isaac's bed, he couldn't help but mutter to himself. They truly are alike. Asterisk. Isaac navigated the hospital and made his way up the stairs, never losing momentum. He passed by many other patients along the hallway and the stairs and saw all manners of hope and despair in their eyes. As Isaac continued ascending, his thoughts couldn't help but wander. In the beginning, he was a lethargic person who barely cared for any gods. He openly admitted his hypocrisy but never once made fun of it. He also acknowledges his wrongs and never actively encourages them, albeit barely. But during his time with two gods, his view of them drastically changed. He went from not giving them a single care to openly and deeply rooting for two of them. In just a span of a few weeks, he had greatly changed as a person. As Isaac ran up, he finally reached the rooftop of the hospital and opened it without hesitation. Whoosh asterisk. It was a bright sunny day. There were barely any clouds in the sky and only the ocean blue skies filled what the eye could see. Sitting down on one of the benches on the rooftop, a lone female figure whose silver-white hair swayed in the wind was present. She seems to be deeply entranced by the sky. She's there. Isaac saw her and, instead of interrupting her, thought of a brilliant idea. He didn't make a sound and quietly approached her. Then, with a soft voice, whispered next to her ear, "Good morning, Lady Furina." Hearing that familiar voice, Furina's eyes widened as she quickly turned her head, which immediately faced his. You. She had never been more glad to see this person's face. At this moment, her bottled-up joy just wanted to burst out. You're fine. Furina smiled softly, with a bit of moisture in her eyes. Seeing her reaction, Isaac smiled softly before muttering, "Do you want some tea over at my place?" Yet. Furina smiled brightly at his invitation as she controlled her emotions. That's right. Isaac might have changed as a person, but his ultimate mindset never once changed. His sole goal since the beginning is and will always be giving serenity. Be it from the windswept lands of the nation of Enmo, the lightning-filled ravines in the land of Electro, to the verdure-rich forests of the land of Dendro. Be it any nation, Isaac's Café would welcome them anytime as long as he has invited tickets. Asterisk. Meanwhile, in the land of monoliths ruled by the Geo-Archon. Wow! So this is Laya Harbor. A floating white fairy gasped in amazement as she looked at the city in front of her. Traveler! Look! They're setting up stalls for the rite of descent. Isn't it cool? Yet. Beside her, a blonde-haired traveler wearing exotic clothing stood. Their hair swayed in the wind as they overlooked the entire city. It's beautiful. The female traveler said in awe. Asterisk. A/N. The first volume is finally done. Leszg goo. Woo. I'm tired. As you all may have picked up from the last parts of this chapter, in the second volume, the traveler will now be introduced to the story. As for how Isaac interacts with the traveler? Who knows? Maybe in the shadows or directly. As always, that's just a theory. Thank you, my friends. Alright, Amy Mir. Time to sleep. Comment. 67 comment. Vote. 1 left. Chapter 54, Side Story, A Skirmish. Going out for your mission. A woman's words echoed through a hallway. On the other side of the dark hallway, where the windows only showed the endless and seemingly never-ending blizzard, a figure stopped walking. The figure then turned around and glared at the woman. What does it have to do with you? Haha, as impolite as ever. The woman snickered. You ought to have better manners, perhaps spending all that time in the abyss gave you that tongue. Ha, provoking me for early in the morning? You've got some nerve. The figure gave a scoff to the woman. Which? Why, it's the only way to liven up the atmosphere around here, don't you think so? Hearing the word the man gave her, the woman's temperament changed. Gremlin. Keep that up and you'll end up like child. The man mocked. Speaking of which, you should be with right now. Don't worry, I'm on my way soon. The woman then walked towards the man and scoffed lightly. Let's do well, shall we? Whatever. Saying this, the man clicked his tongue and walked past her, turning and disappearing from her sight. Really? Seeing the man's actions, the woman smiled as if she was pitying him. What a sad existence. Keep that up and you'll make no friends. Saying this, she chuckled and also departed. As the man and woman left, silence once more descended upon the dark hallway. However, soon, two new figures emerged from another pathway. They really don't get along, do they? The soft and gentle voice of a woman resounded throughout the hallway. They're both so hostile. And that would inevitably be their weakness. Another voice of a woman spoke beside her. This time, the voice was stern. Coming from you, I'd believe it, the woman with the soft voice smiled. After all, apart from the director, you're the only one well versed in these kinds of things. By the way, are you going back to Fontaine? The woman asked curiously. Correct, there are some recent issues that I'd like to address with as well as. The woman paused mid-sentence before pulling out a sheet of paper. An interesting matter. Oh? Something that caught your eye. The woman beside her got even more curious. How rare, what is it? Someone who I think to be. As the woman spoke, her eyes, which had a unique X pattern on them, eerily glowed. Another actor. After saying this, the woman threw the paper, and a second later, bright red embers sparked and lit the paper in bright flame. The burning paper fell to the carpeted floors, as it slowly burnt away to ashes. In its last moments, the last readable words left on the paper were Le souffle du silence. Chapter 55, Another Partner. On one particular afternoon in Isaac's Café. I am Welt of humanity. And I stand against you, Dark Queen, as a warrior guardian of the human race. Law and reason, not the chaos of the void, shall prevail today. In the café, three people can be seen watching TV together. On their hands were popcorn and on their faces were 3D glasses. Who do you think would win, Mr. Isaac? Clay, who was watching the show with great interest as she sunk her hands in the bucket of popcorn, asked. Isn't it obvious, little one? Sitting right next to Clay, Yamiko smiled softly as she picked a single popcorn from her bucket. The winner is quite obvious, but for entertainment's sake, I'll just keep quiet. Your thoughts, Isaac? As Yamiko turned her head to look at Isaac, her face suddenly froze when she caught sight of him. I think Welt would win, Isaac said with a stern face. Are you a fan of this Welt, by any chance? Yamiko said with a wry smile as she looked at Isaac. Oh? What makes you say that? As Isaac said this, he put his flags which had Welt's face down and took off his shirt which had Welt's face printed on it. Lastly, he put down the Arahato manga he was holding. Just a guess. Yamiko was speechless for a while before averting her gaze away from Isaac. She wasn't even going to mention the figurines of Welt that were stacked on Isaac's table. She felt like if she asked, she'd be trapped in his fanatic rambling. Times like these are when I thank my kitsune senses. Yamiko sighed softly under her breath. She then quickly changed the topic. By the way, when are you going to invite more people here? Oh, that. Hearing this question, Isaac quickly snapped out of his fanatic behavior and composed himself. Now that I think about it. With Yamiko's reminder, Isaac remembered to check his system points. 522. Not bad. Seeing the amount of points he had amassed from the previous main mission, Isaac felt satisfied. This should be enough for 3 summons. However, it had only been a week since Isaac and Furina's incident with Vokar. With the help of Nouvellette, the natter was promptly hidden away, and it didn't reach the public. Still, now that Isaac showed himself on the radar of the Ihudex, being monitored came in as nothing of a surprise. From time to time, he could feel that some of his customers were monitoring him as such. Isaac had been well behaved these past few days. Right now, since it is Sunday, Isaac gets to close down for the day and spend the whole day with the invited characters free from the eyes of the Marechaussee Phantom. I really can't afford to summon 3 characters all at once right now. Isaac contemplated. Sooner or later, people would realize that the invited people here are not from Fontaine. If that were to happen, even Isaac didn't know if his bullshit no jutsu could work. As such, would the 2 of you like to see the next person? Isaac asked with a light smile. Really? Clay was the first to react with enthusiasm. A new friend will come. Indeed, Isaac nodded at her. He then looked at Ye Maiko. As for you, Maiko. Calling me by my name now, are we? Ye Maiko crossed her arms and smiled mischievously at Isaac. Where did the respectful honorifics go? Then forgive me, Narukami Shrine's head priest, the Narukami Agasho's trusted aide, and a pillar of Inajima, Gyoji Ye Maiko, Isaac said robotically with a clear hint of sarcasm. Does that suffice? Zzz, asterisk. Before Isaac could continue speaking, he suddenly jolted upwards as he felt a buzzing running up his spine. Ouch, what the, did you just use your electrovision at me? Whatever. Do you mean? Ye Maiko replied with a stale smile. Although she spoke softly, it was rigid, and her smile now indicates one thing. She was pissed. It must be divine retribution. It's quite common in Inajima, you know. She chuckled softly to herself. Hey? What's wrong, Mr. Isaac? The oblivious Clay asked as she looked at the 2 of them with innocent confusion. I'm not paid enough to deal with this. Isaac silently complained in his heart. I want to take revenge, but... Looking at his current stats and abilities, Isaac felt helpless. There's nothing that can help me. And using that Evernight skill is out of the question. That thing is too dangerous and has severe backlash on me. He seriously contemplated. I can only use it when I really need to. My only hope right now is... Looking at the floating window in front of him, Isaac subconsciously gulped. Please, be someone that can counteract her. Would you like to invite a new character? Cost, 160 points. Y/N. Isaac prayed deeply in his heart that he wouldn't get someone troublesome for a while before finally extending his hand toward the screen. Alright, let's go. After thinking this, Isaac's hand touched the floating window in front of him, and soon, a new window popped up. Success! Just like before, a ticket flew out from the system window and floated to the door of the café. Slowly, various colors shined from the cracks of the door, as if what was on the other side was showing off a light show. Wow, it's so pretty! Clay saw the door change and looked at it with interest. Are you inviting another person right now, Mr. Isaac? That's right, he nodded. And I just hope that it won't be someone troublesome. Isaac mumbled to himself as he side-eyed a certain kitsune. After saying this, the trio looked at the door which had stopped shining. It then budged a little, as if it was unlocked. At the same time, a new system window appeared in front of Isaac. Who could it be? Curious, Isaac read the profile of the newly summoned character. Profile. Name, Xiao. Vision, Enmo. Title, Yaksha/General Elatus/Conqueror of Demons. From, Liu. This. Seeing the profile of the new person that appeared, Isaac was momentarily stunned before smiling vibrantly. Jackpot. Yes. Isaac silently cheered internally as he retained his calm composure outside. Finally, someone serious. After dealing with a mischievous fox, an arsonist, and a curious mind, Isaac can finally meet someone who is always solemnly stern. In other words, a person who can keep the 3 girls in check with me. Isaac smiled as this thought flashed through his mind. Perfect. Without wasting any time, Isaac immediately summoned Xiao. He clicked on the profile screen and dragged the character's picture out, throwing it at the glowing door. Now we wait. Dash. Meanwhile, in Wangshu Inn. It was a busy day as usual. Merchants and travelers from across Tibet would flock to this inn almost every day. After all, it's one of the tourist spots of the nation. But there's also another reason why a lot of people would visit Wangshu Inn. It was because of a rumor that an adeptus dwelled within it. Nobody knows who this illuminated beast is, but one thing is for sure. He was a reclusive one. Meanwhile, Xiao, who was sitting in one of the hidden rooms in the inn, was silently meditating at a table in front of him. On the small table, an incense was burning, filling the room with aromatic smoke. Currently, at this moment, his karmic debt which had plagued him for centuries is once again acting up. HGN. Clenching his teeth and shuddering, the conqueror of demons desperately suppressed the evil that tainted him. Countless bloodshed and suffering had ailed this yaksha for centuries, yet his tenacity and vow to hold his contract made him persevere to live this long. But even someone as tenacious as a monolith would one day collapse if it were to face something greater. That's why, he had never once let his guard down. It took a lot of effort, but soon, his karmic debt began to die down. Tud asterisk. Ha! Ha! Laying down on the wooden floor, Xiao exhaled heavily as he sweated profusely. Karma. His eyes quickly began to lose focus. It took a lot of his energy to suppress his karma, after all. At this moment, his drowsy eyes could not help but half close, and soon, a hazy memory began to resurface in his mind. This was a memory of the past, one that he would always remember. That melodious scene with the bard under the moonlight who played that flute which unexpectedly soothed his pain during a moment when his karmic debt was about to devour him. That memory is forever stuck in Xiao's mind. He knew not how the bard found him back then, all he knew was that the wind had aided him at his most dire moment. How I long for such soothing melodies once more! Xiao muttered under his breath. However, a second after saying this, he clicked his tongue. How ludicrous! Shaking his mind and getting rid of such childish thoughts, the solemn conqueror of demons stood up and looked at the incense that was still burning. Even this can't help me now, he lamented to himself. As he said this, Xiao walked to the door which led out of the room. I wonder, without something to help me soothe my pain, would my time finally come? He often pondered this with himself, contemplating whether his karmic debt would finally win over him and he would turn into one of the monsters he swore to purge. If so. Xiao then shifted his gaze and looked at his jade polearm, with eyes filled with resilience. I shall take it upon myself to end everything before others get hurt. Even in the end, he still had the tenacity of a yaksha. He, as well as his comrades, swore to fight for this world, after all. As he said this, Xiao took his polearm and opened the wooden door in front of him. Tac asterisk. But instead of seeing the secret passage he always takes, he instead sees something else. Welcome. Got a problem with your insanity? No problemo, Isaac's got Serenity. Chapter 56, a bit too convenient. When Xiao stepped through the door, the space around him suddenly changed, and he was dragged to an unknown location. This is... Quickly realizing the situation he was in, Xiao instantly held his guard up and became wary. Was I pulled to a domain? In the realm of the Adepti, creating domains where they rule over is the norm. Often, these realms are separate from the common eye. As for Xiao, who is also an Adeptus, naturally knew how these realms worked. As such, the first thing that came to his mind when he was pulled into this strange new room was that an Adeptus dragged him into their realm. That's what I think, but... Raising his jade polearm and pointing it at the three figures looking at him, Xiao's eyes couldn't help but blink twice. Who? Your next thoughts are? Suddenly, the man who was behind a counter smirked. Who are they? Xiao, who was also about to think the same thing, froze. In an instant, a fierce look appeared in his eyes. He can read minds. This needs to be placed on a much serious matter. On a much serious matter. However, while Xiao was thinking, the man was also saying the same thing he was thinking. Right. Grip asterisk. Holding on to his polearm tighter, Xiao was ready to attack the unknown person. Seeing Xiao's reaction, the man made a wide smirk, as if amused by the Adeptus' actions. His deep amber eyes, which were vibrant yet also hollow, made Xiao immediately assess that the man carried an enigmatic yet eerily dangerous feeling. Now! With this thought, Xiao lifted his jade polearm and was ready to attack. However, before he could continue, the man's smirk suddenly changed and a laugh escaped his mouth. Haha! I've got to hand it to you. In the same room, the woman with the pink hair scoffed. To provoke a yaksha of Liu? Even I have to deeply contemplate this first before doing such a thing. Yet, but knowing you, you'd still do the same, eh? The man heaved a sigh as he side-eyed the woman. No comments. She replied with a soft smile. The man didn't pursue the matter further and instead shifted his gaze towards the yaksha. Sorry about that, I just thought that it would lighten up the mood. What do you mean? Despite the man's change in attitude, Xiao never let his guard down and continued aiming his polearm at him. Well, first of all, why don't you put down that scary weapon of yours and have a seat? I'm getting scared here, haha. The man with the deep amber eyes chuckled softly at Xiao. He then pointed at a seat. Come on now, don't be shy. Xiao hesitated. This might very well be a trap. He moved his eyes and scanned the room. Other than the man, who wore a white long-sleeved shirt with an apron on top, there was also the woman with pink hair who wore a shrine maiden garment, and finally, a child who wore red clothing who was eating cheesecake beside the aforementioned woman. Looking at the seat the man was pointing at again, Xiao thought for a moment before opening his mouth. Who are you? Me? I go by many names, the man smiled enigmatically. He then raised his right hand and started counting. Some of my names are the Good Hunter, the Eagle of Florence, the Hollow Knight, the Trailblazer, the Captain, the Doctor, the Manager, Sensei, as well as the Traveler. During the time the man spoke, it was as if he was trying to recall and reference something. However, the rest of the people present were oblivious to the references he was making. Seeing how no one got his references, the man wasn't disappointed and let out a soft sigh with a light smile on his face. Forgive me, those were uncalled for. You can just call me Isaac. In the end, the man gave his name. He then pointed at the other two women. That kitsune over there is Ye Maiko, and the little one is Clay. Ye Maiko. Hearing this name, Xiao turned his head and looked at Ye. Are you the head shrine maiden of the Grand Narukami Shrine in Inajima? I'm honored to have the conqueror of demons knowing my name. Hearing her title spoken out loud, Ye Maiko felt very pleased. She turned her head to Isaac. See this, Isaac? This is how you revere someone's title. As if I care. Isaac maintained his smile and lightly nodded. He then looked back at Xiao. Don't be on edge, conqueror of demons, Isaac smirked and pointed at a seat near him. Take a seat. You can trust him, Ye Maiko vouched on the side. However, she soon followed up with a comment, most of the time. Xiao looked at the seat Isaac was pointing at and stared at it for a few moments. That black comfortable-looking seat with the soft residential cushion on top allured the conqueror of demons. I shall take your word for it, Xiao looked at Ye Maiko before approaching the seat Isaac was offering him and sat down. Got you. Seeing Xiao sit down, Isaac almost let a wide grin escape his face. Fortunately, he was quite adept at controlling his expressions. You have no choice now, Xiao. You will experience a soothing trip down Isaac's Serenity Café. Let's begin business. Isaac heaved a soft sigh and curled up a light courteous smile. What tea would you like to have, dear sir? Xiao heard this and pondered for a moment. Everything was still flowing a bit too fast for him. First, he was dragged somewhere unknown, met someone with mysterious motives, encountered the head shrine maiden of Inajima, and now he's being asked what kind of tea he likes. This is odd. The yaksha thought as he warily looked around to see if this was a trap. However, there's not a single sight of any form of trap anywhere. Ah, that's not good, dear sir. Once more, Isaac's words drifted over to Xiao. Having negative emotions here is highly prohibited, you know. If I may be so bold, conqueror of demons. With the thought in mind, Isaac took out the menu and pointed at a specific tea. Might I recommend you a drink? He then tapped on the menu. This here is called a lavender tea. This one, along with chamomile and mint tea, is my go-to whenever I'm feeling down. Their ability to calm down turmoil emotions is quite the miracle, something that I dearly love. How about it? Isaac's deep amber eyes then looked directly at Xiao's golden eyes. Then, with a soft smile, he spoke, would you like one? That's... Looking at Isaac's eyes, Xiao froze for a moment. He didn't know why, but those deep amber eyes of the man in front of him reminded him of someone. Eyes that seem to hold an immeasurable and vast sea of enigma, yet give strength to those that gaze upon them. Yes, Xiao had seen them before. Those amber eyes. It was just like... No, before Xiao could finish his thoughts, he immediately cut off his train of thought. He acted as if he was about to commit blasphemy. They're only the same. There's no way that... Though he said that, Xiao still had difficulty convincing himself otherwise. They just appear similar, that's all. Shaking his head, Xiao shook off his thoughts and looked again at the man in front of him. I should approach this from another perspective. Making up his mind, Xiao, with his unmoved and solemn face, nodded. I'd try it. Oh. Two gasps of surprise escaped the mouths of Ye Miko and Isaac almost at the same time. It was as if they heard something out of this world. No way. Isaac, who was planning to show other options in case Xiao rejected the lavender tea, became baffled. Where did your cynical nature go? You trusted me way too fast. Even for him, this deus ex machina was too convenient. However, not gonna complain though. Isaac's smile grew vibrant and he raised a thumbs up. If it makes the job easier, why not? Very well. Receiving Xiao's order, Isaac nodded his head. Fastening his gloves, he took a plate and turned around. I'll whip it up in a moment. With those words, Isaac left the counter and went into the kitchen. And after this. However, inside the kitchen, Isaac muttered something under his breath. You will be my regular customer, hee. Was it morally correct to exploit an emotionally scarred person like Xiao? The answer is no, of course. But Isaac was doing Xiao a favor here. In exchange for Xiao's help, Isaac, in turn, would help soothe his karmic debt. It was a win-win. Chapter 57, Miko's Thoughts. Isaac held the cup of tea in one hand and the tea bag in the other. With careful precision, he poured a bit of the boiling water into the teacup. He then circularly swirled the cup before deciding to toss out the water inside. After doing all this, Isaac finally poured a lot of hot water and added the tea bag, letting it settle. While waiting for the tea to settle, Isaac moved around the kitchen and took one porcelain plate. He brought it back with him and patiently waited for the tea bag to set. Isaac wasn't in a hurry. He merely sat down and absorbed the moment. Reaching for his inventory, Isaac took out the tea he brewed for himself for occasions like this. Cling asterisk. Soon, a teacup with a small porcelain plate appeared and Isaac held them. The tender rays of light coming through the windows, as well as the distant noises of his peculiar customers, gave Isaac a chance to immerse in his own thoughts. I haven't had a slow morning like this for a while now. He sighed to himself. What a fine morning. Isaac missed moments like these. Due to his need to finish his main quests, he had been running around and doing all sorts of things that would normally sit beyond his range of comfort. And although it was rewarding, it ultimately took the thing Isaac valued the most. His own leisurely time. Lifting his green tea and cradling it, the soft and fresh aroma drifted over to his nose. Smiling, Isaac closed his eyes and slowly drank the tea he was holding with a smile, letting the mildly grassy taste drift over his mouth. Yet, as if making up his mind, Isaac opened his deep amber eyes and thought inwardly. For the time being, I'm holding off from doing any quests. What matters right now is... He then looked over the lavender he made for Xiao. Right now, it was exuding a fresh floral aroma. The serenity of someone who needs it. Isaac was foolish. He was blinded by his greed and all he thought about was receiving benefits without even looking at Xiao as a person but a mere benefit for him. He was deeply ashamed of himself. He swore to give everyone in this land with a troubled mind a haven to rest, not a place for him to exploit them. Once more, Isaac's hypocritical side reared its head. I have to change. Isaac mumbled under his breath as he looked at the window of his kitchen where a soft ray of light was entering the room. I can't go on like this. As Isaac said this, he suddenly felt something. He lowered his head and saw that his dendrovision, which he always keeps in his pocket, was glowing. Hey! Looking at the vision's strange behavior, Isaac was intrigued. He then took it out. Did you resonate with my thoughts? Saying these words, Isaac brought the vision close to him and held it tight. Don't worry. My conviction on the day I received you is still as strong as it was back then. I swear. Looking at his vision, which was the proof of his ambition, Isaac smiled softly. This time, he won't make the same mistake. Dash. Have you gotten all that? Meanwhile, while Isaac was busy contemplating himself in the kitchen, Ye Miko was explaining to Xiao about his situation. I have, I'm grateful. Xiao nodded his head as he spoke to Ye Miko. Though it is strange, with Isaac's behavior until now, then I can only trust you. Very good. Hearing this, Ye Miko smugly smiled. Although Isaac doesn't admit it, the three of us so far who he invited know that he is inclined to help us as if burdened with a glorious purpose. So no matter how manipulative he is most of the time, his goal of helping our troubled minds never once left that skull of his. As Ye Miko spoke, she smiled as if remembering something from not too long ago. So rest assured. Do you really trust him that much? Xiao, who was innately cynical due to his vast experience on the battlefield, asked. You are openly aware of the various facades he wears, yet you still trust he doesn't have any hidden motive against you. Are you not skeptical? Hearing Xiao's words, Ye Maiko's ears swayed as if they were amused. What came after was a charming soft smile, a specialty of the shrine maiden of Inajima. Of course I'm skeptical. Until now, Ye Maiko still believes that Isaac wasn't an ordinary being. To be capable of summoning various people from all over Tibet wasn't a normal power, after all. So although she would tease and secretly watch Isaac while he sleeps sometimes, she would never have any malicious thoughts about him. She knew that beneath those various masks he buried himself in, there was a true face she still hadn't seen. She wants to find out what it is, his true self. And so, as skeptical as she is of Isaac, her curiosity about him ultimately overshadows this. I'm skeptical. Having thought of all this, Ye Maiko brought her hand close to her face and hid her amused smile. However, teasing him is more fun. The sadistic kitsune of the Narukami shrine giggled to herself as she said this. Xiao observed her and saw her genuine smile as if she truly meant it. Her impression of Isaac gave Xiao all he needed to know about this enigmatic person who summoned him from Liu. A multi-faced man who is shrouded in mystery, yet cares for those around him. Xiao thought as this description matched another person he knew. Having thought of this, he opened his mouth. If so, then I'll have to adjust my assessment of him. Despite such things, he did not dare to let his guard down one bit. Who knows if that man named Isaac still had other things kept secret from them. Just then, while Ye Maiko and Xiao were in the middle of a conversation, Isaac walked out of the kitchen. This time, he was holding a white porcelain plate with a teacup on top. On the side were 3 tofus and a pair of chopsticks. Watching Isaac, Xiao couldn't help but notice something about him. His temperament changed. Previously, the reason Xiao became hostile towards Isaac was because of his predatory eyes. Those deep amber eyes looked like they wanted something from Xiao. But now, those vibes vanished. Your order, sir. Approaching Xiao, Isaac placed the porcelain plate down and slid it over to him. 1 lavender tea with a squeeze of lemon, and tofu on the side. If you didn't mind, I added a few of my recommendations. Isaac spoke softly in an unrushed tone with a smile. I hope it's up to your liking. Bon appétit. After saying these words, Isaac turned his head and shifted his attention to Ye Maiko. By the way, where's Clay? She went upstairs after finishing her cheesecake, Ye Maiko said earnestly as she smiled mischievously. She was pretty excited about it, so I didn't stop her. At that moment, it felt like time stopped. Isaac, who was in the midst of a tranquil state, couldn't help but stagger down when he heard this. Say. What? She went upstairs. Once more, Ye Maiko spoke bluntly and watched Isaac's actions with an amused smile. If you want to stop her from blowing things up, you better get moving. Hearing this, Isaac's eyes widened and he quickly straightened his posture. He then looked at Xiao. I'll be back shortly. Please, enjoy your meal. Having said this, he quickly left the counter and rushed upstairs. While running, he was mumbling something under his breath. My figures. Oh no. Haha, Ye Maiko chuckled to herself watching Isaac run in a hurry as if his life was on the line. She then turned her head to Xiao. Didn't I tell you? Silly acts like that is what makes my time here worthwhile. He always acts posh in front of his customers. Having said this, Ye Maiko stood up. But I know he's the complete opposite of it. That's what I love about Isaac. With those words, Ye Maiko followed Isaac and also went upstairs. She couldn't hope to possibly miss seeing a scene of Isaac trying to stop a terrorist from destroying his stuff. As such, now that the 3 of them left, it was now only the conqueror of demons left in the cafe. He was now left with his own thoughts, as well as the aromatic lavender tea in front of him. In such a situation, there was only one thing left to do. Chapter 58, Tenderness of the Tofu. Xiao watched as the scalding hot tea in front of him let off subtle steam in silence. Upstairs, he could hear the faint sounds of thumping and shouting, with the voice of the male barista being significantly louder and more panicked. Shifting his golden eyes over to the plate presented to him, he fell into contemplation. Looking behind him, he saw the clear glass pane window and the city of Fontaine outside. An even more unfamiliar environment. Xiao, who had always stayed in Liu, was unfamiliar with the modern Fontaine. Fleeing here won't do much. And looking back at the rapidly cooling tofu, his eyes became focused. That man named Isaac doesn't seem to be holding any malicious intent. Cynical as he was, Xiao was still relatively reasonable. This yaksha who experienced the bloody battlefield multiple times knows how to properly respond to any situation he finds himself in. As for right now, he only has one option. Comply. Correcting his sitting posture, Xiao placed down his jade polyrm and looked at the meal in front of him. It was a simple meal that comprised nothing but tea and tofu. On the side of the tofu was a silver spoon. Xiao raised his hand before picking up the silver spoon and felt it cold to the touch, perhaps due to the air conditioner in the cafe. He brought his spoon close to the glistening white soft tofu and took a slice from its corner. After which, he brought the spoon with the tofu close to his nose and lightly smelled it. Right after smelling it, he judged that it wasn't laced with anything dangerous. It only exuded a faint soybean scent. Xiao looked at the tofu for a moment before finally eating it. Nom asterisk. The soft-boiled tofu gently separated as it made contact with Xiao's tongue. The texture was silky and soft, to the point that it felt like it would melt in his mouth. Additionally, the simple taste of the tofu, without any additional flavors, was favored by Xiao. Because, as it happens, his favorite meal is also tofu. Is it just a coincidence? Xiao thought. However, there was no way for him to know. As for why it's his favorite? Simply put, it reminds him of the dreams he devoured. Gulping down the tofu, Xiao lightly nodded his head. He quite liked it. He then looked at the lavender tea Isaac gave him. He extended his hand and took the teacup before gently cradling it and bringing it close to his nose. He took a quick sniff of the scent and the floral aroma quickly attacked his nose. It was a gentle aroma as if inviting him to relax. Tea. Looking at the teacup in front of him, Xiao fell into thinking. In the past, I used to drink these to calm my nerves. But as time passed by, its effects started waning until it became completely ineffective to me. One must know that simple remedies cannot heal deep scars formed from wars. Even now, countless dark and howling screams terrorize Xiao's inner mind. They were all the karma he had mulat throughout his life as a Yaska, forever lingering with him and torturing him. If Isaac were here and knew of Xiao's thoughts, he would surely lampoon and try to persuade Xiao to go to therapy as a war veteran. Gently cradling the tea and seeing his faint reflection on the surface, Xiao observed his stale cold expressionless face. After using several items to calm myself, I believe that this would be a useless endeavor. He thought as he looked at the tea in his hand. After a brief moment of silence, he brought the teacup to his mouth and took a sip. Soon, the delicate and slightly sweet taste of the lavender tea rushed through Xiao's tongue. Additionally, the presence of the lemon added a tangy kick and a burst of freshness to the taste. Together, they created a harmonious balance of flavors, with the floral sweetness complementing the citrusy acidity. As for Xiao, he was slightly taken aback, but not to the point that it was exaggerated. The taste of the tea just left him in a state of shock. This is... Xiao looked around, but all he saw was the silent cafe and the ray of light outside penetrating through the glass pane windows. Xiao continued to look around, before finally coming up with a conclusion. It's... quiet. Silence. For the first time since he can remember, he once more felt what silence is like. No horrendous voices were cursing at any given moment. It was as if they all had been silenced to eternal damnation. How? In disbelief of what was happening, Xiao looked back at the teacup he was holding. In it, the surface of the tea slightly rippled as his reflection refracted. How is this possible? It was unbelievable. For ages, he had tried various methods to suppress his karma. Even pills crafted by the Adepti only suppressed them to a certain extent. Never had he experienced something that could completely suppress his karmic debt. Observing the tea, Xiao fell into deep contemplation. This. Just as Xiao said this, voices suddenly started approaching him. But this time, it wasn't the voices in his head, but rather, from the real world. Do that again and I'd seriously ban you for 2 weeks, young lady. Isaac clicked his tongue as he walked down the stairs. Clay, on the other hand, was panicking as she tried to persuade him. Wait. I won't do it again. Please, Mr. Isaac. Nutta, you've been causing too much mischief for me. Isaac looked at her. First you detonated a smoke bomb in my cafe, causing me to have to release it outside, and now you were trying to set up a private bomb factory on my 2nd floor? Yeah, no. Gosh, you sure have too much idea, don't you? Meanwhile, Ye Maiko was watching the scene play out with an entertained face. If you had been a little bit more subtle, perhaps you would have succeeded. Wait, really? Clay, hearing Yamiko, believed her. I see. For God's sake. Isaac felt like a headache was about to arrive as the two chatted. However, before he erupted, he saw Xiao, who was quietly sitting down and watching them. Right. Clearing his mind, he heaved a don't such and gestured to the two women at a table. Can you two sit down there for a bit? I still have a customer to attend to. He's our new friend. Seeing Xiao for the first time, Clay became curious. Can I talk to him? I think it's wise to do that later, little one. Just then, Yamiko interjected Clay and guided her to the table Isaac pointed at it. Come on then. As the two of them started moving, Yamiko turned around and looked at Isaac. She then winked. You owe me one. Ha. Yeah right. Isaac rolled his eyes before nodding lightly and walking away. After doing this, he walked behind the counter and stood adjacent to Xiao. How was your meal, dear customer? It was good. Finding no merit in telling any lie, Xiao decided to be straightforwardly honest. +10. +5. +5. Seeing the confirmations, Isaac relaxed as his smile softened. Is that so? Then that's delightful to hear. Seeing the satisfaction of my dear customers has been my utmost cherished goal. For all time, always. Xiao nodded his head lightly. He then followed it with words. If you don't mind, can I ask a question? Oh? Of course. Hearing Xiao, Isaac's face lit up. He always loved it when he was asked questions. Please, do go on ahead. Might I inquire what you put in this tea? Xiao lifted his teacup, which was now half empty. The tea. Hearing his question, Isaac spaced out for a moment. He then composed himself and explained with a calm tone. Well, to start, I just placed a tea bag full of lavender in a teacup and let it simmer with hot water. Apart from that, I also added a dash of lemon for a distinct taste, he added. Hearing the simple procedure, Xiao became slightly perplexed. He still had doubts. That's it. That's it. Isaac smiled. Xiao became silent as he fell into contemplation. He was now looking at the teacup he had in silence. After a few moments, he looked back at Isaac. I see. Well then. After saying this, Xiao got off the stool and stood up. Is he leaving already? Isaac felt saddened that they only met briefly. Well, I can just hope that I made a good impression and that he might return. I see. What Isaac anticipated was finally here. In the end, he could only silently sigh. Well, I'm glad you enjoyed your visit. Yes, Xiao's golden eyes sized up Isaac and he lightly nodded his head. I had a new experience here. That's wonderful to hear. Isaac lightly smiled. He then looked at the door. Do remember, if you ever want to come back here, then please, return at any time. We will always welcome you. Xiao heard this and he paused. He then turned around and saw Isaac, Yamiko and Clay looking at him with warmness in their eyes. Have a safe trip, dear customer. Isaac opened his mouth, and tender words escaped. Hearing such unfamiliar words, no, he once heard those words before, but they gradually receded in his mind. Xiao fell into silence. After a few moments, he sighed lightly. I will try. And so, the conqueror of demons left. However, it won't be the last time that this war-torn soldier would be heard of in the cafe. Seeing Xiao leave, Isaac sighed externally. He then picked up a teacup and brewed himself a cappuccino. Congrats, Isaac. Yamiko's voice drifted over to his ears. You earned another customer. And you guys got a new friend. He retorted with a light smile. So what are you gonna do now? Ignoring Isaac's remark, Yamiko changed the subject. You said that the Ihudex's personnel are watching you, what are you gonna do? Well, if Monsieur Nouvelet were to send more Marechaussee personnel, then it might cause me a bit of trouble, Isaac explained as he stirred the cup of coffee he just brewed. But would you lose? Yamiko then asked. Hearing this, Isaac paused before lifting his head and smirking. Nah, I'd win. Because throughout heaven and earth, I alone am the cunning one. Chapter 59, Miracles. Name. Isaac Alder. Reason for your visit. Oh, just a moment. Currently, at the entrance of Opera Epic Lace, Isaac was undergoing a standard procedure. Today was just supposed to be a normal working day for him, that was until he received a letter from Furina telling him to visit the opera. He was reluctant at first and wanted to decline, but then he saw that she said it was an important matter. As such, hesitant as he may, he decided to go. Since it was his first time going to the opera, he wanted to look nice. As a true fashion connoisseur and a resident of Fontaine, it's a moral imperative for Isaac to always look great. And, of course, Isaac could never hope to forget to bring his beloved silver tip cane. Pulling out a card that came along with the letter Furina gave him, Isaac handed it to the Melusine. "Here you go." After looking at the card given to them, the Melusine nodded their head and gave the card back to Isaac. "All right, everything's good so far. Lady Furina's reception room is located on this floor," the Melusine pointed at the map of the opera Epic Lace. "Take the stairs on the right, and it should take you there with no problems." "Thank you." Isaac stuffed the card back into his inner pockets and smiled at the Melusine before leaving. With that, Isaac started walking off. Not many people here today. While walking, Isaac noticed that there were very few people present. That means there should be no trial today. Then that begs the question. Isaac then grasped his chin. Why did Furina ask me over? What important thing does she even want to tell me? Isaac sighed. Oh well. Just then, while walking, Isaac noticed two figures not far away. Due to their features, Isaac easily identified them. Well. If it isn't my dear customer, Freminute. Recognizing who it was, Isaac decided to strike up a conversation. What a coincidence to bump into you here. And oh, Miss Lynette is also here. And if the two of them are here, that means... Isaac smiled. Lenny should be nearby. Seeing Isaac approach them with a conversation, Freminute, who was observing the room, replied. Monsieur Isaac? What are you doing here? Freminute didn't want to say it out loud, but seeing Isaac out of his café made it slightly surreal for him. After all, the latter rarely went out and is always seen in his café. Hey, don't look at me with those eyes like I'm a hikikomori. Isaac lampooned. He then shook his head and chuckled lightly before giving a reply. Nothing much, just out for some personal matters. How about you two? Since the House of the Hearth was related to Isaac's next main quest, his main goal right now is to establish a friendly relationship with them. Oh, we actually came here because Lady Furina invited us. The soft-spoken Freminute explained. She said she had something to tell Linny, so the three of us came. She also called them? Strange. Just what is that brat plotting? Isaac wasn't a stranger to a scheme when he noticed one. After all, he was no stranger to them. I should ask later. Wrapping up his thought, he heaved a soft sigh. You three truly are inseparable. How envious. Thank you, Freminute softly smiled. Meanwhile, Lynette, who was watching the whole while drinking her tea in silence, was slightly dumbfounded. Freminute smiled. It was truly a rare sight to see, especially since they see each other every day. Seeing Freminute open up more emotions, Isaac silently rejoiced in his heart. Good, young one. It seems like spending my time helping you open up has been worthwhile. This was a sign that Isaac had somewhat given a troubled mind a bit of comfort. Just then, while the two of them were chatting, another voice joined in. Ah, good, you two are Who's this? It was none other than Linny. Recognizing who it was, Freminute took the lead. Oh, this is Monsieur Isaac. You know. The owner of the café I always go to. Haha, of course, I remember. Approaching Isaac, Linny took off his magician's top hat and pressed it on his chest. Good afternoon, Monsieur Isaac. Please, there's no need for formalities, let's all just talk comfortably, Not being a fan of an overly formal discussion, Isaac decided to ease up the atmosphere. If that's so, then don't mind if I do. Hearing Isaac's words, Linny chuckled lightly and put his magician's top hat back on. It's nice to meet you again, Linny. Seizing this opportunity, Isaac decided to go for the attack. Although I haven't mentioned this in our previous meeting, I'm a big fan. Ah, is that so? Hearing Isaac's remark, Linny, who was also curious about this enigmatic cafe owner, decided to entertain him. I won't believe you. Unless, of course, you check your inner pockets. Hmm. Confused, Isaac thought for a moment before realizing what Linny meant. Seeing Linny's cheeky eyes, Isaac instantly knew what it meant. No. It can't be. He then quickly checked his silk vest's inner pocket and felt something. He reached his hand and pulled out a card. This. Seeing which card it was, Isaac felt a cold sweat drop down his neck. What a scary coincidence. It was the Fool card. Amazing. Deciding to think about this matter later, Isaac gave a surprised expression and handed the card back to Linny. I didn't even notice it. Just how did you do it? That's a magician's secret. Bringing his forefinger to his lips, Linny smiled. Miracles can't be openly shared now, can they? What a charlatan. I like it. Laughing to himself internally, Isaac decided to play along. Miracles, hey? Well, I guess you're right. But there is one miracle from you magicians that I always wanted to see. Looking at the time from his pocket watch, Isaac decided to also act like a charlatan. And that is. Piqued by Isaac's words, Linny decided to probe in further. He wanted to know what kind of miracles this man in front of him wanted to see so much. Smirking enigmatically, Isaac gave a solemn reply. Of course, it's coming back from the dead. He smiled softly at the two magicians in front of him. Coming back from the dead. Hearing such outlandish words, Linny was taken aback for a moment. However, his interest had never been so aroused. What do you mean? Isn't it the greatest miracle, Linny? Isaac chuckled to himself lightly. I once heard that magicians who can perform miracles and come back from the dead are called miracle invokers. Think about it for a moment. Just the thought of coming back to life just for a performance. It's... Before Isaac could finish his words, Linny interjected. A sublime feeling. Truly so. Although his words were cut off, Isaac didn't mind it one bit. Taking a look at his pocket watch, Isaac decided that this was enough. Well, this has been a fun talk, Linny. But I apologize, I must go now. Haha, it's quite alright, I very much enjoyed that conversation. Looking at Isaac, Linny's eyes only showed great interest. If I have the time, I'd like to chat with you more in the foreseeable future. I'd be looking forward to it. Picking up his cane, Isaac nodded to them lightly before walking off and disappearing down the stairs. Seeing the man leave, the first to speak from the three was Lynette. Linny. I know. Sensing what his sister was about to say, Linny turned his head and faintly smiled at her. He's an interesting fellow. After making sure that no one was present and listening, Linny continued to speak. I'm sure Father would also find him noteworthy. Dash. After walking for a few moments, Isaac finally found Furina's reception room. He then raised his hand and knocked on the door. Lady Furina. His voice echoed throughout the silent hallway behind him, however, the person on the other side of the door heard him clearly. You're late. Come on in. Yet, she's not happy. Only now did Isaac realize that his chat with the siblings went on for a bit longer than he thought. I'm coming in. He pushed open the door and went inside. Good afternoon, Lady Furina. However, when he entered, he was dumbfounded by what he saw. This is... Inside the room, 2 rows of mannequins lined up side by side, each wearing a unique dress for men. And, at the end of the line, Furina was sitting down as she watched Isaac from the other side of the room. For some reason, she was looking too regal today. What's the reason you called me here today, Lady Furina? Not knowing what going on, Isaac decided to ask. Hee, rejoice once more, Isaac. Chuckling to herself, Furina stood up from her chair and walked towards Isaac. Isaac, on the other hand, didn't move and let her walk to him. It felt like the right choice. When Furina finally got close to Isaac, the two of them stood in front of each other, with but a tiny gap separating them. If it weren't for their height difference, perhaps they'd be seeing face to face. Congrats, Isaac! For you have been gracefully chosen by none other than I to be. As Furina spoke, her confidence grew as her voice became excited. One of the main actors of a movie I am directing and am part of. Hey! It truly is no rest for the wicked. Chapter 60, The Guillotine Roll. Pardon. Hearing Furina, Isaac couldn't help but confirm if he heard things right. You want me to play a role in a movie? That's right. Seeing that Isaac was showing hesitation, Furina quickly tried to persuade him. Out of everyone I know, you're the only one that suits this role perfectly down to the last detail. Is it a calm person who wishes nothing but his solitude? Isaac scoffed sarcastically. Oh? You actually figured it out. Actually, you're not too far off. Furina crossed her arms and nodded. The role you're planning is actually a person from a historical event in Fontaine. It's the story about a marechaussee hunter from 500 years ago, who, after going through a traumatic bloody battle, wanted to retire, Furina explained. However, no matter how much he ran from his past, he was still reminded of his past actions. Is that the marechaussee hunter artifact set? As an avid lore enjoyer, Isaac instantly recognized who Furina was mentioning. How funny! The person I used to see as a flavor text is now a real historical figure. One that I must play too, might I add. Thinking of this matter, a small heave of a sigh escaped Isaac's mouth. I admit that it's an interesting role, but I still have a business to run, Lady Furina. He looked at her and their eyes matched. As much as I want to help you with this, I have my own thing to manage. So please, I will have to kindly refuse. Special privilege. However, before he could finish his words, Furina quickly cut him off. Raising her forefighter, Furina smiled coquettishly. You heard me. Special privileges. Saying this, Furina backed away from Isaac and sat on the table behind her. Once she was on top of the table, she crossed her legs and looked down at Isaac with an amused smile. If you were to accept this role, I, as the Hydro Archon of Fontaine, would bestow upon thee certain special privileges that no normal person can ever hope to hold in their life. Such as... As she spoke, Furina's smile became more profoundly alluring. Gaining access to certain places that are off-limits for the public, business exposure to more people, and Furina hesitated before continuing with her words. A private chat with me, anytime and anywhere you want. With this, Furina placed both of her hands on her raised thigh and smiled at Isaac. Well then, Isaac, won't you think about this more thoroughly? Meanwhile, Isaac, who was listening to her the whole time, was in a moment of stasis. Isaac wasn't dense. He can read the room naturally like any other. As such, he quickly realized what Furina meant by her offers for him. Lady Furina, I didn't think you were this kind of person. Yes, he isn't dense. To think. He then subconsciously gulped. That you'd bribe me with all these just to have someone to talk to anytime and anywhere. Isaac almost shed a tear at how lonely his Archon had gotten. How pitiful. He isn't dense, most of the time. He's quite observant and knows how to read between the lines, but often uses them in the wrong way. Just like how he got the other point of Furina's words oblivious to her main point. Still. Shaking his head and clearing his thoughts, Isaac thought of another matter. Although all of them are alluring, I can't just. New quest has been issued. A-rank quest. Type, side quest. Title, The Good Hunter. Objectives, exceptionally perform the role of the marechaussee hunter in the film Furina is making and striking a lasting impression on the watchers. Rewards, Memories Yaharnam's first hunter eye, Café interior upgrade. Hey! Seeing the sudden notification appearing in front of him, Isaac rubbed his eyes and wondered if he was seeing things. Are you serious? It was a bunch of rewards he had never seen before, and just from the names alone, they seemed very alluring. Battle experiences of the first hunter. An interior upgrade for the café. At that moment, gears started spinning inside Isaac's head. It's as if the system is telling me to do it. After seeing such rewards, Isaac didn't even need to hesitate anymore. Hey, if that's what the system wants, then who am I to not go along? It is what it is. He smiled enthusiastically. He then looked at Furina and tapped his nape. Well. Now that you mention those things. You accept. Furina couldn't wait anymore and hopped off the table before running to Isaac. She then stood in front of him. Well. Isaac could have a sword. He saw stars in her eyes as she asked him with anticipation. Cute. With that enthusiasm from my Archon herself, how could I have the guts to refuse any more? He smiled wryly. Besides, I also think this would be a great opportunity for me to try new things out. Looking at Furina, Isaac couldn't help but notice her greyish-silver hair and the rising uncontrollable urge to pat her head from the depths of his soul. In the end, he gave in to his demons. Raising his hand, he placed it on her head. So yes, I accept. Why'd you do that? Feeling Isaac's thick warm hand placed on her head, Furina's face quickly got plastered with a red hue as she tried to get his hand off. Haha, sorry. Seeing her reaction, Isaac chuckled to himself. You were showing your head in front of me so eagerly, so I couldn't resist. Forgive me. Humph, I'll forgive you this once. Crossing her hand, Furina pouted. However, she then raised her forefinger. But since you've accepted the role, I guess that special privilege I mentioned is now in effect. So. Her voice then lowered as she continued to speak. Just do that in moderation. Okay. That's part of my special privilege. Isaac was surprised about this. However, seeing that Furina didn't like it, he decided to lessen the head pats in the future. In the end, he could only give a light nod. By the way, remembering something, Isaac decided to use this opportunity to change the subject. Do you know why Linny and his siblings came here? You already met them. Hearing Isaac's question, Furina raised an eyebrow. However, she then scoffed lightly. That makes it easier to explain then. In regards to the movie I'm directing, I decided to collaborate with a lot of people to make it happen. She explained. And, during the time when I was thinking of a character that fits the story, I stumbled upon Linny and Lynette. Such a duo couldn't have possibly fitted much better. Moreover, their background as magicians is no different from acting, making it much more easier for them to participate. What exactly is their role? From her tone of voice, Isaac felt like she was waiting for him to ask more. Hehe, that's the best part, Furina winked and smiled. She had long wanted to share her creative work. Linny and Lynette would perform the roles of the two adoptive children of the character you're playing. Just. Who are the characters again? Isaac already knew the answer to his question, but he just wanted to make things sure. Well, you'll play Emmanuel Gillidan, Linny would play Elaine Gillidan, and Lynette would play Mary Ann Gillidan. Ah, I knew it. Isaac didn't know whether to laugh or cry. So I'd be working with the House of the Heart pretty close, eh? Not bad. Thanks, Furina. While Isaac was rejoicing in his mind, Furina continued to speak. Additionally, since the first half of the movie is set in Poisson, I spoke with Spina de Rosala's president and agreed to a collaboration. Navia, the president of Spina de Rosala, would also play a hand in the movie. Oh. Another chance for me to form relationships with the Spina. Furina, you're seriously saving me here. Isaac lightly nodded his head. However, he soon noticed something was off. But Furina. Would be your role? Hehe, I'm playing the role of Lyris, the kind Oceanid and director of the orphanage all of the other characters came from. Furina sounded pretty confident about her role. As for Isaac, he could only lampoon to himself. Quite subtle, Furina. Quite subtle. So. Are all these the characters? Isaac crossed his hands and raised one arm as he asked. That's right, what do you think? Furina nodded her head as she went back and sat down. I spent an awful amount of time reading through ancient documents about this. But the main theme is exploring Emmanuel's mentality and how he copes and finally settles with his past before moving on to the future with a new light. It certainly sounds interesting. Bravo for thinking of this kind of plot, Lady Furina. Isaac praised her. He then smiled softly, alrighty then. From now on, I'll take this role seriously. Such was Isaac's thought at that moment. Never would he have thought that the waves that this movie had would soon greatly affect Fontaine. And gaining the solidified attention of a certain harbinger. But as if Celestia itself was playing with him, another issue had risen on top of what he was already dealing with. One that involved a certain traveler in the nation of Liu. Chapter 61, Want a Job? 1. Following Isaac's agreement with Furina's film, he decided to return to his cafe and plan out his schedule. The day proceeded normally, with Isaac greeting his frequent customers. Time would continue to move along until it was finally nighttime. Seeing that there was no one else present in the cafe, Isaac decided to bring out his journal, write down his thoughts, and visualize them. Since I decided to join Furina's film, I'm going to have to spend less time in the cafe. That's not good. Isaac wanted to uphold his core principle, one which he has yet to give up on like others. However, each time filming shouldn't take any less than 5 hours, right? Surely. As he wrote his thoughts, Isaac couldn't help but stop and gather his thoughts mid-sentence. If only there was someone who could take over my position while I'm gone. Thinking of this, the first thoughts that surfaced in Isaac's mind were the invited people. Clay. Ha! Not even worth considering. Just leaving her alone in my cafe for less than an hour might destroy my business and leave me with burnt rubbles. Isaac wrote down his thoughts with a wry smile, as if amusing himself. Hard pass. Yay Maiko. To be honest, she does seem like a decent person, however. Lifting his pen, Isaac stopped mid-sentence once more. I don't think that an esteemed kitsune is willing to do that. He then imagined an annoyed kitsune serving tea to a customer. Either a divine retribution would come down or she would simply just stop working. Yet, she ain't cut out for it. Moving on to Nahida. Well, she can't even bring her physical body here. I doubt she can work properly. Writing this, Isaac wryly chuckled to himself. I'm sorry, little cabbage. Lastly, Xiao. Writing Xiao's name down, Isaac felt a slight chill run down his spine. However, he soon brushed it off. Just writing his name makes me shiver. Was he aware? Scary guy. I think it's fair to say that Xiao isn't suited for a bartender. Not only does he have a bad temper, but his karmic debt is also lethal to normal humans without a vision. After writing these down, Isaac leaned back in his seat and looked at his journal in silence as he contemplated. Just who can I pick between them? Isaac bit his thumb as he pondered deeply. Think, Isaac, think. As he continued to ponder over this matter seriously, he suddenly noticed a newspaper that a customer left behind earlier from the corner of his eye. On the paper, a clear picture of a blonde-haired traveler wielding a silver sword can be seen. Together with them, a white floating fairy was pointing in the direction in front of them. Running out of ideas, Isaac decided to take the newspaper to look at it closely. Unknown traveler to the hero of Mondstadt. The exceptional tale of the traveler who fought the dragon terror of the nation of freedom. Isaac read the header out loud. Honorary Knight. Lumen. She should have arrived in Liyue by now. It was odd. From Isaac's perspective, the roles of the twins and their effects on Teyvat are quite heavy. Just the thought of an unknown traveler whose age might even be comparable to Starts themselves suddenly visiting and getting stuck in a world makes Isaac shiver. What's worse is that one of them is siding with the morally questionable forces. One is the light, while the other lost their light. Ironic. As a former player himself, Isaac had never put that much thought into the traveler. However, now that the traveler is a living breathing person, and Isaac is just one of the many inhabitants that might get swept up in their dispute with the abyss, then this just escalated to a much higher problem for him. Tap asterisk. Tap asterisk. Tapping his forefinger against the counter, Isaac contemplated for a good few minutes before finally standing up. On second thought, isn't this a good opportunity for me? As the traveler continues to wander Teyvat, they would come to witness different stories, and would eventually develop a skeptical personality not easily trusting others as much as they did before. As such, Isaac had an idea. Smiling, Isaac called forth his system. Hey system, do you have any side quests at Liyue for me? Notice. D-rank quest. Type, side quest. Title, a leisurely stroll. Objectives, take a nice relaxing stroll around Liyue Harbor. Rewards, 5 points. Seeing the notification window appear in front of him with its contents, a smile started forming on Isaac's face. You know me so well, system. I accept it. Saying this, Isaac stood up and walked towards the door of the cafe, and closed it. He rolled down the blinders and locked the door. After doing this, Isaac looked around before nodding. He reached out his hand and took something from his system inventory. A few seconds later, new clothes appeared out of nowhere. Along with a prop. Looking at the clothes he just pulled out, Isaac chuckled lightly to himself. Right. It's decided then. I'll hire Lumen for tomorrow. Unfortunately, Rex Lapis Rite of Descent would happen a day after that. That means the Liyue main quest would start soon. Although it was lamentable, Isaac couldn't do anything about it. Taking his new set of clothes and props as a disguise, Isaac sighed. But it is what it is, I guess. Liyue Harbor, the bustling economic powerhouse out of the 7 nations second to Snezhnia. It was a city ruled by the Geo-Archon Morix and served as a trading hub for many nations. Ships would dock from time to time, while some would leave and set sail to head to another nation. In this bustling harbor, on one secluded corner of an establishment, a man quietly stepped out from the shadows. A tall slender young man with a pale complexion and long blonde hair, coupled with a pair of green eyes emerged. On his back, however, was a white coffin. Despite the coffin's size, it didn't seem to affect him at all. This was, of course, none other than Isaac in the guise of another person. Finally, I'm at Liu Harbor. With this, I can now return here whenever I want. Isaac saved the location on his map before inwardly sighing and looking around. Bright orange lanterns filled the streets, and stalls were everywhere. This was to be expected, of course. Since Rex Lapis' annual descent was about to happen. Now that I'm here, I wonder where the traveler is. Isaac looked around and saw many people, but he couldn't see anyone wearing exotic clothing. Seeing that people were starting to stare at the man carrying a suspected coffin, Isaac decided to start moving. He wanted to find the traveler as fast as possible. Just where could they be? As Isaac walked, he couldn't help but notice some people giving him odd looks. To this, he could only lampoon. This is what you get for carrying a huge coffin. But it's essential to be in character, so I can't complain. Isaac wanted to climb the stairs to have a better view of the harbor when suddenly, a hand grabbed him from behind. Ha! I knew it. It's you. That's... Recognizing the voice, Isaac turned around and saw a familiar hat. Miss Who? Haha, good, you remember me. Yes, it was none other than Hu Tao, director of Wangsheng Funeral Parlor. I need to escape. Isaac didn't want to deal with Hu Tao's shenanigans right now. One brat like Furina was enough, he didn't need another. Yes, what a good coincidence. Is there anything you wish of me, Miss Hu? Oh, it's nothing. Hu Tao smiled. She then pointed at his back. But I see that you're still carrying your coffin around. I'm seriously thinking that the person inside is... Haha, you needn't worry, Miss Hu. Isaac smiled softly at her with reassurance. I have a secret formulation that keeps my friend here intact as the day they passed. So you don't need to worry. Well, that's a little bit convenient, isn't it? She giggled a little. Now you've caught my interest. Surely, you can let me peek inside, right? Hearing this, Isaac found the perfect opportunity to be a charlatan. Miss Hu Tao, you know I can't do that. Not only is it because it's a violation of my friend's trust, but also a disrespect to the deceased. Isaac spouted random things that made him look like the real character he was playing. So please, I hope that you will understand. Yeah, no, it's not your fault, I crossed the line there, I apologize. Realizing her action, Hu Tao sighed. Let me ask another question then. Where did you get your coffin made? Saying this, she suddenly started touching his massive coffin. Look at that great design. A true art of craftsmanship. Tell you what, Luoka, if you work with Wangsheng Funeral Parlor, I swear to you that it would be a great transformation in your career. Perhaps thinking that he was an undertaker, Hu Tao decided to scout him. However, Isaac didn't want it. He was already satisfied with his job. I'm sorry, but I must decline. If there's nothing else, then I must leave now. Farewell. Isaac felt like the longer he stayed with Hu Tao, the higher the chance that she'd do something out of his expectations. As such, he decided to be a JoJo and ran away. Using the crowd, he carefully weaved through each person and distanced himself from Hu Tao. Sorry, Hu Tao. If this were any other ordinary day, I would have talked to you more. But I have a goal. Hey wait, I wasn't done talking. Seeing Luoka disappear among the crowd, Hu Tao felt helpless. Due to her height, she wasn't able to have a good view of where he went. As such, he had completely disappeared from her sight. Seriously, I just wanted to talk. Why did he run away like that? Humph, mark my words. The next time I meet you, I'll definitely pin you down. With these words, Hu Tao pouted and went to find Zhongli. Meanwhile, with Isaac, he successfully ran away from Hu Tao and was now hiding beneath a tree. Seriously. I just wanted to have a nice stroll. What were even the chances of bumping into her? Isaac felt like someone was deliberately messing with his luck or fate. And it wasn't a pleasant feeling. Ha! If only. Just then, just as Isaac was about to complain to himself once more, he caught something at the corner of his eye. Traveler, let's try this. This grilled tiger fish looks great. Oh, And also this braised pork. Oh, Paimon wants to try them all. Paimon knew coming out on the night before the rite would be a great idea. Look at all these night foods. Hehe, just trust Paimon. A series of high-pitched laughter came from a certain direction which attracted Isaac's attention. There, he saw the familiar white fairy. And, right beside the floating fairy, the familiar blonde traveler was present. All right, but just be careful to not upset your stomach. Seeing such a scene, Isaac was silent at first before forming a smirk. Bingo! Asterisk asterisk asterisk. A/N, going back and seeing the comments left by you guys, I just realized how unhinged you guys are. One of you even posted a pic of Hutao's bottom. And somehow managed to get away with it. Insane. Chapter 62, Want a Job? 2. Traveler, let's try that stall next. Paimon, the floating fairy, suggested with great enthusiasm. Chop suey? Alright. Lumen, who was holding a wallet full of mora, nodded. These two people were none other than the heroes of Mondstadt who recently solved the Storm Terror incident. Currently, in search of the traveler's sibling, they are traveling from nation to nation in hopes of finding clues about the sibling. After obtaining advice from the Inmo Archon Barbados himself, they decided to head to Liu. It was because Morux, the Geo Archon, would soon be making his annual descent. If the traveler were to have a chance to talk to him, then perhaps she could learn something about her brother. After ordering 2 chop sueys, the two of them sat down on a table and picked up their chopsticks. Ugh! Realizing that the chopsticks were too big for her small hands, Paimon showed a troubled look. However, a second later, she mastered it. Oh! That was easy. Using her chopsticks, Paimon picked up the meat from her howl and ate it. Oh! Delicious! I'm surprised you immediately got the hang of it, Paimon. Lumen, who was properly holding her chopsticks, commented. When it comes to food, nothing really stops you, hey. Hehe, you should know this by now, traveler. Turning her head to Lumen, Paimon snickered. When it comes to the great Paimon, nothing can stand in her way. Alright, alright. Amused, Lumen heaved a soft sigh with a faint smile on her lips. Taking a piece of chicken meat and wrapping it with a piece of lettuce, Lumen precisely maneuvered her chopsticks. She then placed it in her mouth and chewed. It does taste good. The two continued to chat and enjoyed their dinner as they watched the bustling harbor slowly fade deep into the night. Despite that, there were still a lot of people present in the streets. Ah, that was such a good meal. Satisfied, Paimon smiled happily. Liu's cuisine is really different from Mondstadt's. I'm glad you enjoyed your meal, Paimon. Also finishing her meal, Lumen heaved a soft sigh as she let out a bit of gas from her mouth. But now we have a problem. Hey? What is it? Paimon asked, sensing Lumen's mood turning dampened. See for yourself. Lumen said as she held her wallet of mora. Paimon peeked in and her eyes widened. This? No, this can't be. Paimon said with a panicked voice. We had so much. How did it all disappear in a blink of an eye? We only have 7,000 mora left. Lumen said with a frown. Guess we'll have to go back to adventuring for the time being again, Paimon. Ugh, Paimon, sorry. If Paimon were a little more frugal, we wouldn't be in this situation in the first place. Paimon tapped her head as she apologized. It's all right, we can just save our way back again to stability. As Lumen spoke, she suddenly remembered Paimon's appetite. Right. As if realizing Lumen's gaze, Paimon bemoaned. Oh. If only there was a way to get back all those mora as quickly as possible. We really need a miracle right now. Something that would save us from this predicament. Pardon me. Just then, while Paimon was lamenting, a tall slender man wearing a black turtleneck with a white coat embellished with green and golden accents, with a long, green scarf tied around his left forearm, paired with white pants and black boots with gold buttons and black solace, approached them. It was an understatement to say that the man was conspicuous. No, he was too eye-catching. Especially since he was holding onto a white coffin behind him. The blonde man, who approached them, then looked at Lumen. Forgive me for intruding upon your conversation. But are you perhaps the traveler? You know, the renowned honorary knight of Mondstadt. That's me, Lumen nodded her head as she observed the man. Who's asking? Ah, forgive me. I forgot to introduce myself. Realizing his mistake, the man shook his head. I'm Luaka. I'm a traveling merchant. Luaka, hey. Scrutinizing Luaka from top to bottom, Paimon observed him suspiciously. So why did you come looking for the traveler? Yes, I actually have a request for the traveler. A commission, if you will. Luaka spoke politely and calmly, not showing any hint of any other emotions. Hey? A commission? At this hour of the night? Paimon tilted her head as she grasped her chin. You aren't planning to give us any weird commission, are you? No, don't misunderstand. He shook his head as he tried to clear the misunderstanding. It's a commission for tomorrow morning, actually. And the pay? Paimon immediately went straight to the point before even asking what the commission was. 100,000 mora. I see, 100,000. Paimon was just about to ponder about the pay when she suddenly stopped and looked at Luaka with wide eyes. What did you say? She was in a clear state of shock. As for Lumen, she too was a bit baffled. This was the first time they were commissioned with the price of 100,000 mora, after all. That's a lot. You heard me. 100,000 mora. Luaka continued to speak calmly without any hesitation, keeping a poker face the whole time. If you were to accept my commission, I'd be willing to divulge more information. Can you give us a moment? Paimon asked as she looked at Lumen. No problem. Luaka lightly nodded his head. He then walked to an empty table and sat down. Go ahead. Afterward, Lumen and Paimon stood up and walked a bit away from Luaka and started discussing. Traveler. Should we do it? This guy must be some crazy rich nouveau riche. Paimon whispered to her partner with excitement. I have to admit, I'm also tempted. Lumen crossed her arms as she pondered. But we still don't know what kind of commission it is. For all we know, it might be something dangerous. Oh, you're right. Understanding Lumen's words, Paimon nodded her head. Usually, the higher the pay means the higher the danger. High risk, high reward, Lumen commented. Yeah, that. Paimon agreed with her. With that said, why don't we ask what kind of job it is first, then we'll decide. Seems good to me. Lumen hummed and agreed with Paimon. All right. Finishing their talk, the two of them returned and sat at the same table as the enigmatic man. Before we accept, can you tell us a bit more about the commission? Lumen was the first to speak. That's right. After all, we still don't know what we're getting ourselves into. Paimon added on the side. There's no need to worry. It isn't anything sketchy. Sensing their suspicion, the man scoffed lightly. But very well, I understand where you're coming from. Well then, allow me to share some info. My colleague, who sent me, is actually the owner of a very popular café, and he's been needing new assistants especially since his schedule has been packed recently, Luaka explained in a calm and tranquil manner. And so he asked me, who has a lot of connections as a traveling merchant, to go find an adventurer to hire. It was then that I realized that the renowned hero of Mondstadt was here in Liu, and a thought suddenly occurred to me. Luaka grasped his chin. My friend would surely love the idea of a hero working with him. And so, I approached you too. What? So it's actually just a bartending job. In the revelation of what the commission truly was, Paimon was even more baffled. And here Paimon thought it would be something like escorting an important figure. Well, that's basically it. Saying this, Luaka then turned to Lumen. Well then, miss? What do you think of this commission? Since Lumen was the one ultimately making the decision, she fell into deep contemplation. It seems like a rather easy task. And the pay is great too. And she then looked up to Luaka and his calm face. She observed him for a bit longer before thinking to herself. Well, he doesn't look like someone who has ulterior motives, at least. After pondering it a bit more, she finally made a decision. We'll take this commission. That's wonderful to hear. Hearing their answer, Luaka let out a soft heave of relief. He then stood up. Then, let us meet again in front of third round knockout tomorrow morning. I'll be picking you two there at around 8 in the morning, so do be sure to wake up early, alright? Alright, no problem. Paimon nodded as she and Lumen also got up from the table. Smiling enigmatically, Loaka nodded and turned around without saying any other word. Carrying his white coffin, he walked away and slowly blended in the crowd, eventually disappearing from the two sights. Dash. And just like that, night had passed and the sun's rays blanketed the land once more. As agreed upon, Lumen and Paimon woke up early and went to the restaurant called Third Round Knockout and waited for Loaka. It didn't take them long before his figure appeared. "Good morning, Loaka." Seeing him, Paimon greeted him as per her usual character. "Good morning to you too." Loaka nodded his head and softly smiled at them. "Are you two ready?" Lumen and Paimon looked at each other and nodded. The latter then spoke, "Yet." "Very good. Well then." Verifying that they were reading, Loaka spoke. "If the two of you would be so kind, could you close your eyes and hold my hand?" "Eh? Close our eyes and hold you?" Paimon asked curiously. "Why? It's a surprise." Loaka smiled mysteriously like a charlatan. "Would you two trust me?" Paimon and Lumen found it odd, but since it was just a harmless action, they both decided to do it. "Well. All right then." Both of them closed their hands and extended their hands to him. Loaka then lifted his hand and held both their hands. He then started speaking softly. "All right. 5, 4, 3. In the darkness of her closed eyes, all Lumen could hear was Loaka slowly counting down from 5. "What's happening?" 2, and 1. Finally, Loaka finished his countdown. "All right, the two of you could open your eyes now." "Hey? Weird. Telling us to close our hands only to open them seconds later." Paimon mildly complained. She then opened her eyes. "Why even? Hey!" Just as she was about to complain, she noticed that something happened. This is... Where are we?" Lumen said as she also opened her eyes and looked around. "Weren't we in front of the third round knockout? Why are we suddenly here?" It was a completely different environment. Something that resembles a cafe rather than a restaurant. Are you two the ones Loaka sent?" Suddenly, a voice came from behind them. The two of them turned around and saw a person. He was a tall figure with brown hair and deep amber eyes. He wore a regular barista's uniform. Looking at your cards. It seems like I was right," the man said as he softly smiled at them. "Cards?" Lumen and Paimon said at the same time. They both then looked at their hands and saw cards which they didn't have before. Paimon had a tarot card called the Moon, while Lumen had a card called the Star. "Hey? What's this?" Paimon looked at the cards given to them and asked curiously. "We didn't have these before." Clap asterisk. Suddenly they heard a clap. Both of them turned their heads and looked at the man in front of them. "Well then, since the two of you are here. Want a job?" Chapter 63, The Devil. Isaac always plans ahead, no matter the circ misstance. Although he always did this in the past in fear of unexpected situations, after going through an unexpectedly severe event with Furina, he decided to change his methods. Originally, he wanted to entice Lumen to work for his cafe with a piece of information regarding her brother. But when he thought it over, he decided to take a step back and change it. He thought that it was too early for her to know such a thing. Moreover, he wanted her to follow the original story and learn things in her own way. And so, he came up with another method, the common language of all adventurers. Money. No one can resist such lustrous pieces of materials, especially if given in high amounts. As such, Isaac decided to take a minor percentage of his money and give it to Lumen as his first commission for her. But you might wonder, where did Isaac get such an amount of money? Much less give them away when he oh so dearly loves them? Well, that's another story for another time. Some things are better off hiding in the dark until discovered, after all. Welcome, you two. Seeing the baffled expressions of the traveler and her companion, Isaac almost couldn't contain his laughter. But he kept his professionalism and upheld his courteous smile. "Seeing as you two have the cards, that means Mr. Chariot has acknowledged you. How delightful. Hold on a sec." Hearing the bizarre words uttered by the man in front of them, Paimon was the first to interject. "What do you mean by cards? Who's Mr. Chariot? And where even are we? And isn't this technically human trafficking?" she added as she pointed at Isaac. "I mean it totally is, but we'll just have to pretend that it isn't." Isaac lampooned honestly. "Just some minor details. What do you mean by minor details? Paimon asked profusely. However, Isaac decided to ignore the white fairy for now. He then turned his head to the blonde traveler. Miss, I believe you are the renowned honorary knight of Mondstadt. I am. Cautiously looking at the smiling man, Lumen nodded her head. You must be the friend Luaka mentioned. Indeed, Isaac uttered with a nonchalant tone. And, as he has most likely stated, I'm hiring some helpers. I believe the amount he gave is quite proper. He emphasized with a cheeky smile. Hearing his confirmation, Lumen pondered deeply for a moment before speaking. Very well. But I want to know. Where are we? Good question, Isaac smirked as he pointed at her. Well, to not beat around the bush, you're currently inside my café in the beautiful city of Fontaine. Fontaine. Hearing the word, Paimon quickly interjected. The nation of Hydro. Maintaining his courteous smile, Isaac nodded. Indeed, but let's skip over those minor details, eh? Let's get down to business. Snap asterisk. With a flick of his fingers, a thick green vine suddenly started crawling from the ground and quickly grew to his height. Afterward, a flower bloomed, and inside, a paper with letters inscribed on them appeared. Everything looked natural. Of course, if it wasn't for Isaac wearing a velvet red overcoat with a dark suit underneath, then this scene would have probably ended up less tense. Everything about Isaac's current appearance yelled shrewd businessman. If he had a pair of red spectacles, then it might have just been the perfect scene. Soon, more vines appeared and condensed to one thick vine before dragging a chair nearby and placing it behind Isaac. Lumen and Paimon watched in silence, not knowing what the man in front of them would do. Isaac, on the other hand, was having fun toying with them. Sitting down with his leg on top of another, he smiled. This is some good reaction. Maybe I should make this a new persona of mine? I'll write that down in my journal. Well then. Controlling the dendrovines he conjured, Isaac stared at Lumen with an amused smirk. Care to read the fine print? Seeing the darkish green vines extending towards them, both Paimon and Lumen hesitated. They were terrified. Traveler. Paimon thinks we just met Tivet's devil. Paimon said with a low voice as she hid behind Lumen. I assure you, I won't do anything that would otherwise harm both of you, Isaac chuckled lightly, seeing their reactions. Again, I am only someone looking for temporary employees. Yet, but saying that with that look is scary. Paimon blurted out. You're like a devil in velvet. She added. Not a bad nickname. Hearing the first nickname Paimon gave him, Isaac didn't find it half bad. I'll take that as a compliment. Commanding a dendrovine, Isaac brought forth a teacup. Take as long as you need. I'll wait. With that, he started sipping his cup of tea, waiting for Lumen and Paimon. Seeing the man not do anything anymore, Paimon and Lumen looked at each other before looking back at the man sipping tea. Traveler. Should we back out now? Paimon's senses are telling her that he's bad news. The floating fairy said while pointing at Isaac, who was happily drinking. Maybe you're right. Lumen nodded her head as she thought more about this. I've got a bad feeling, let's just stick to our gut and refuse his offer. I'm sure he'll understand. But still. Though she said that, Lumen's eyes couldn't help but dart back to Isaac's figure. To meet someone capable of teleporting others across nations. One could only imagine how powerful such a person is. Lumen wasn't a fool. She knows how to read a situation and properly react to it. And right now, she was torn between two decisions. Either trust this mysterious man or leave, potentially never meeting him again. She had to admit she was very weak right now. With her power sealed and her utter lack of knowledge of this world, she was as vulnerable as she could get. Right now, other than her blade work, she only has two elements at her disposal. And she knows pretty well that those won't last her long. As such, perhaps there's a chance for them to team up in the future and help her. Then again, recalling the man named Luaka's words, she couldn't help but ponder. This person is undoubtedly suspicious. But he's showing goodwill right now. Turning away such a person. Biting her lip, she closed her eyes for a few moments. Moments later, she opened them, revealing her glistening golden pupils that seemed to radiate the soft and tender glow of the sun itself. Taking a look at the contract given to her, Lumen read them in her mind. What was inside followed a proper contract. It included 3 parties, namely Isaac, Lumen, and Paimon. The contract only lasted a day, but during this time, Lumen and Paimon would act as Isaac's bartenders in his absence, and, at the end of the day, the latter would pay them 100,000 mora in full. What followed was a series of clauses, but none of them were very demanding. As Lumen continued to read the contract, she couldn't help but notice one clause in it. Never set foot off the café in Isaac's absence. Reading this clause, Lumen first contemplated the reason for it. But in the end, she just concluded it might have something to do with the teleportation. Perhaps this is the restriction for such a thing. No matter what it was, Lumen didn't find any problems with it and subconsciously agreed. This was a reasonable development. Lowering the paper from her face, Lumen looked at Isaac for a moment before reopening her mouth. I agree. Traveler. Hearing Lumen's decision, Paimon's eyes widened as she floated beside her. She then leaned forward and asked the traveler. What do you mean? Don't tell me you actually accept it. It's fine, Paimon. Looking back at her worried flying companion, Lumen curled up a soft smile and reassured her. This is my decision. If anything happens. Article I Clause 4, if the employees, Paimon and Lumen, were harmed by the employer Isaac during their time in his café, then the employer Isaac would pay them twofold of their original salary promised to them and treat them with utmost medical aid. Lumen quoted content in the contract given to her. Huh? Did Paimon hear that correctly? Twofold. Paimon's baffled voice continued to reach a higher pitch as she spoke. That's way too generous. I know. Lightly nodding her head in agreement with Paimon, Lumen once more looked back at Isaac, who was sitting down on his chair. To go that far? I'm sure Mr. Isaac truly values his employees. What started as wanting to earn money turned into curiosity. Now that she had read the contract, Lumen found that it mostly benefited them more than Isaac. In essence, it seems like all Isaac truly wanted were bartenders. Regardless, this meeting brought forth an opportunity for Lumen, a chance to be close to this enigmatic being. If he can teleport others, then, perhaps. As she thought of this, scenes of her attempted departure resurfaced in her mind. Perhaps he knows a thing or two. While Lumen and Paimon were talking to each other, Isaac, on the other hand, was still calmly sitting down. However, his hand was now covering his mouth. For the two of them should never see such a frighteningly voracious smile from the man in velvet. Ha! I got her. Isaac tried his best to conceal his smirk that seemed to reach both ends of his ears. But all he could do was twitch it. This is even better than I imagined. I thought I would have to coax her with more things, but to think that she accepted it from the get-go. Biting his lips, he forcefully stopped his mouth from smiling. But this is even better. Worry not, my dear Lumen. As Isaac thought of this, his deep amber eyes, which always seemed to be devoid of anything for the first time, showed a faint brilliance as if radiating the surface of a setting sun. Those dead lifeless eyes, which even Isaac gave up on showing emotions from, finally showed a reaction. And the target of this brilliant reaction was none other than the incarnation of the stars themselves. Unaware of his eyes, Isaac continued to look at Lumen. Yes. I'll make sure to be your sponsor from the shadows. Isaac smiled faintly. I'll be your supporter in the shadows. Just thinking of being a mysterious entity secretly aiding the traveler from the shadows. Ah, it makes my skin crawl. Isaac shivered at this thought. Not from disgust, but from excitement. Seriously. Internally sighing, Isaac scoffed before standing up. The things I do to make things a bit more interesting, what a pernicious habit. Well then, standing up from his chair, Isaac flared up his velvet red overcoat and approached Lumen. I'm looking forward to your cooperation. He showed a faint genuine smile as he spoke. Perhaps because of his excitement earlier, but his face still had a bit of a red hue. I welcome you, Ms. Star and Ms. Moon. He added with a sincere smile. These would be your code names in the café from now on. After saying this, he then reached out his two hands to Lumen and Paimon for a shake. Isaac Alder. Lumen. Extending her hand, Lumen took his hand and shook it. A pleasure working with you. Well. The name's Paimon. Although she was still a bit skeptical of Isaac, Paimon still shook his hand. Pleasure to work with you too, devil. Ah, that nickname's gonna stick, won't it? Isaac internally sighed. Well, there's no stopping her now. Oh well. Shaking both of their hands, Isaac chuckled softly. He then took the contract. Oh, let's not forget about the signatures. Don't worry, this is just for legal reasons. He then gave 2 pens to them from his pockets and also gave the paper back to them. If you would. All right, taking the pen offered to her, Lumen held it and found a table to write it. She placed the contract down on the table before signing her name. Done. Your turn, Paimon. Oh, okay. Holding her pen, Paimon floated over to the table and also wrote her name. Paimonde. Done. Seeing this, Lumen lightly nodded her head. She then looked back at Isaac with her determined golden eyes. From now on, we're in your care. Isaac caught her stare and looked back with his deep amber eyes that had already stopped their reaction from earlier. Likewise. May we have a great time. All of us. Grin. Chapter 64, Why Are You? Lady Furina. Inside the Palais Mermonia, at an unspecified date and time. The records you wanted are here. A Melusine spoke as she placed an envelope on Furina's desk. The Melusine then added, the Lautomni Film Festival is nearing, and, as you have requested, we've placed your name among the participants. That's good. Hearing this, Furina, who was reading a letter with a serious face, looked back at the Melusine. How about the invitation I told you about? Did you send it to him? Indeed, the Melusine nodded her head. She then pulled out another letter. Monsieur Isaac replied that he'd go to the opera house on accord with your invitation. That's good. Furina exhaled a small sigh of relief. If he hadn't, I might have needed to personally see him. But still. This is all to confirm something. She then looked at the envelope given to her prior. She lifted her hand and took the envelope before taking out the doc asterisk meant inside. Reading the doc asterisk meant, her hand's grip on the paper tightened for a moment. She then looked at the Melusine. Can you go outside for a moment? I have a matter to take care of. Of course, Lady Furina. The Melusine nodded her head as she complied. Shortly after, she left the room, leaving Furina alone. Alone in her office, Furina nodded her head. She then took the doc asterisk meant and walked over to a flippable chalkboard. Furina approached it and turned the chalkboard, revealing the other side. On the board, a series of pinned pictures were present, with lines connecting them. Holding the doc asterisk meant in her hand, Furina took one pin and placed it on the board. She then took a step back and looked at the chalkboard in whole. Her hand clenched as if she had a terrible feeling. MMGH. Looking at the chalkboard, Furina held her shock as she tried to rationalize her thoughts. However, the series of points presented in front of her made a compelling argument. The timeline also matches. She said as her eyes turned dull, beginning to see the outline of it all. If this means what it truly means. She then took out another picture and held it in her hand. That means. You are a great liar. She then placed the final picture in the middle of all the pinned pictures and notes. In the picture she pinned, a man holding a teacup was present. He had an amicable smile and a warm gaze. However, contrary to his expressions, Furina looked at his picture with disbelief and reluctance. Ever since the day she was rescued by the man, she had noticed a lot of things that were kept a secret from her by him. His excuses were too convenient and she couldn't help but want to fact-check things for herself. As such, she went and dug up Isaac's past. She found nothing at first but then noticed one crucial pivotal point in his doc asterisk meant. The moment his cafe opened was the moment the masked clown appeared shortly after. And from this, she went down a rabbit hole. With this film festival. She then took a step back. I hope that you'll convince me otherwise. Otherwise. She then turned silent and didn't finish her sentence. Her voice was heavy during the whole ordeal. Soon, only silence remained in her office. Dash. On the day of their first recording, Isaac left Lumen and Paimon in the cafe after showing them the basics. After doing this, he hurried over to Poisson and fortunately made it in time. Their set was near Spina de Rosala's base, and with Navia's involvement, the production was set up relatively easily. Do you not see, sister? Father is obviously in low spirits. Holding his script, Lenny practiced his lines. Today's his birthday. He shouldn't be like this. What can we do? All he does is drown in alcohol. He's always in low spirits. Holding her script, Lynette spoke with her usual expressionless face. I have an idea. Lenny uttered with a vibrant smile. Why don't we surprise him with a birthday cake? That would surely lift Father's spirits, right? It's worth a try. Lynette nodded her head in agreement. Let's try it. Just then, a voice interrupted them. Not far away, Furina appeared with a cheerful smile. All right, cut. Hiring you two was definitely a great decision, Furina spoke as her heterochromatic eyes looked at the twins. She then nodded in approval. Your acting seemed natural and superb. Keep doing what you two are doing. Ah, thanks Lady Furina, Lynette chuckled wryly at her compliments. He then reciprocated, still, it's all thanks to our beloved director for coming up with this story. Hehe, no need to praise me. Furina smiled smugly at Linny's compliments. This is only natural for someone like me, after all. Linny nodded his head with a smile as he caught Furina's intent. He then changed the subject, by the way. Where's Monsieur Isaac? I think he's still inside the dressing room, Lynette replied to her brother's question. He's been in there for 15 minutes now. What? Hearing the time Isaac had been inside the dressing room, Linny felt baffled. He didn't pass out in there, did he? I appreciate the worry. Just then, a voice joined in their conversation. But I must confirm that I'm still alive and kicking. I ain't falling that easily. The three of them turned their heads and looked at the source of the voice. Sure enough, it was none other than Isaac who just came out of the dressing room. Monsieur Isaac, you're finally here. Having bonded over magic tricks the last time they met, Linny had a great impression of Isaac. You're just in time for the rehearsal. Haha, sorry for only showing up now, chuckling wryly, Isaac looked at Linny with his deep amber eyes. It's just that this costume required a lot of details. But hey, Isaac then turned over and looked at Furina. Does this look fit the character in your mind? Furina. Furina, who saw Isaac's costume, became momentarily silent. Currently, Isaac was wearing a tight black double-breasted frock coat with dark slim pants. On his coat, the badge of the Marechaussee Phantom of old was present. It was a standard uniform of the Marechaussee. However, on Isaac's face, a mask that covered the lower half of his face was present. Along with it was a monocle that hung on his left eye. Furina silently watched Isaac as another person emerged from her mind. However, she soon shook her head and focused on the present. You look excellent. Furina approved of his costume. She then pointed at his face, did you also add a fake scar that spanned half of your face? Yup, I followed the instructions to the dot. Isaac boasted as he took off his mask, revealing a pale scar that spanned from his right jaw to the rest of his face. Gotta say, your makeup artists are on another level, Lady Furina. Ha, of course. Retorting to Isaac's words, Furina scoffed. They need to have at least this much to serve their god. Smiling to himself, it seemed like Isaac was lampooning himself once more. Yeah, I guess so. Your silence is so loud, I could almost hear your ridicule of me in your mind. Furina's eyes shifted and glared at Isaac. You have a pernicious habit, one that you have ever since we met. Sorry. Smiling wryly, Isaac apologized. Force of habit. All right, enough, rolling her eyes, Furina handed Isaac's script to him. Go and practice your scenes with Linny and Lynette. As the main actor, you should give this your all. Furina reminded. After all, I'm also the director. And if my actors aren't up to my standards, well, you know how it would go. Hi. Got it, Isaac nodded his head in agreement. He then walked over to Linny and Lynette with his script. Furina, who watched him walk off, continued to watch him in silence. Crossing her hands, she observed his every move while wearing his costume. Isaac started acting with Linny and Lynette. Seeing him act, Furina felt relieved that he acted better than she thought. However, from time to time, she would be reminded of another person while watching him. Clenching her elbow, she comforted herself. Relax. Perhaps they just have the same body build. There's no way. However, before she could finish her thoughts, she suddenly saw Isaac finally play out his role's more somber moments. I am a hypocrite, Isaac, now seriously acting as Emmanuel Gillidan, looked at Linny with his deep amber eyes that had lost their light of hope. I'm sorry, Elaine. As a hunter, who I've hunted that day weren't prey. He spoke as his aura became cold and distant. But people whom I swore to protect. He clenched his hands and looked away from Linny. I'm irredeemable. Father. Looking at Isaac, Linny's eyes showed genuine sadness. Please, don't say that. Father. Lynette also joined in as she held Isaac's shirt. Furina watched it all play out, and truthfully, it shocked her. Such raw emotions. I didn't know these three could show such emotions. However, her eyes then looked over at Isaac. She was reluctant at first, but the more she observed him, the more she found the similarities that can't be denied. She had purposely picked out his clothes to match the clown thief's appearance that night. And sure enough, it satisfied her curiosity. Why do you look like that thief? Those who hide themselves behind masks know each other too well, after all. Chapter 65, His Perspective. Captain. This. Fire and blood were everywhere. Bodies are stacked upon one another as they get ravaged by the seemingly never-ending crimson fire atop them. In the distance, raised buildings were seen scattered all over the ground. It was as if an unprecedented great war had occurred. Among the bodies, a group of people gathered over a plaza as they looked around at the irreversible damage they had caused. These men were battered with blood bruises, while some were missing a limb. However, one thing is present in all of their faces. All of them had deep solemn dead eyes. One of these men, a man, was seen holding a revolver. The blood on his coat was noticeably brighter than those around him. This wasn't supposed to happen, the man said as he clenched his hand on his revolver tightly. He then lifted his hand and looked at his revolver. His full grey eyes seemingly lost all their life. Women and children. All of them were. None of them were spared. There's nothing to feel guilty about, Emmanuel. Just then, another man wearing the same uniform as him approached him. However, in contrast to him, the man did not have any sort of stain on his clothing. Rather than blaming yourself, blame Eduardo and his band of outlaws. If they hadn't escaped the court's edict, kidnapped our men, and forcefully seized Poisson, none of this would have happened. He added with a solemn tone. The man then extended his hand and tapped the man named Emmanuel's shoulder. We'll take it from here. You've done your job. Though the man said this, Emmanuel couldn't help but open his mouth. He spoke with a weak voice. Was it necessary to burn them all? Even the civilians? The more he thought of his disgraceful actions, the more his voice faltered. This could have all been solved with Eduardo. There was no need. You've done your job. Just then, the man cut off Emmanuel's words. The man then looked Emmanuel in the eyes. The Maison Gardiennage will take care of everything. As for you, hunter. Well, there's that saying, right? A hunter must hunt. Hearing this sentence, Emmanuel's teeth clenched as his head throbbed. The sensation of killing everyone in Poisson was still fresh in his mind, never leaving him a chance to breathe. As a hunter, he was used to killing the abominations of the night. But hunting down his fellow humans? It was sickening. Seeing Emmanuel having trouble breathing, the man nodded his head. Go back. There's no need to trouble yourself here further. After the man said this, he left Emmanuel to his own devices. The latter then collapsed to the ground trembling. The guilt of his own actions fell upon him, crushing him in an instant. Looking at his gun, his eyes wavered back and forth. He then lifted his hand, placed the gun under his neck, and rested his finger on the trigger. Forgive me. Basil, Dwight, Carl. He whispered to himself as he remembered his childhood friends whom he always played with in that orphanage. Those peaceful days in the Narcissenkreuz Institute forever remained the happiest moment of his life. Even now, at his self-condemnation, it was where his mind was drifting to. Having made up his last prayer, Emmanuel was just about to pull the trigger when suddenly, a memory flashed through his mind. You know, Emmanuel, you've always acted as the hunter during our play actings. In the memory, a woman with grayish-white hair and heterochromatic eyes appeared. She appeared to be drinking tea. Do you love that role? Yes, Miss Lyris. The young Emmanuel answered as his eyes were filled with innocence. Together with Basil, Dwight, and Carl, we'll protect the kingdom from the evil beasts. Haha, then, from now on. The lady then placed her hand on his head as she put down her teacup. Always be the fearsome hunter, unyielding in the face of anything and the most versatile. It was a beautiful memory he shared with the director of the orphanage. The kind Oceanid who was always looking out for them, Miss Lyris. The memory then changes. Elaine, and Mary Ann. In the distant future, Emmanuel was now a grown adult and had entered the Marechaussee Hunters. Yes, Basil, his childhood friend, nodded. As you know, the situation with the cataclysm is getting worse. Ever since Miss Lyris' disappearance, the Institute has been continuously falling into disrepair. She explained. Afterward, 2 children peeked out from behind her. That's why. I'm leaving them to you. Emmanuel, can I entrust you with them? Of course, finding no reason to refuse, Emmanuel accepted without hesitation. It won't be that hard, would it? Don't worry, they're well-behaved children. Basil chuckled softly. Well then. I hope that, for their sake, you'd continue to be the reliable hunter. Just like always. That was the day he got himself a new family. Ones that he swore to protect. Once more, a new memory takes place. All right, you two, Emmanuel, with his usual carefree smile, looked at his 2 new adopted children. From now on, you two will share my last name. Elaine Gillidan and Mary Ann Gillidan. Uttering their new names, Emmanuel warmly smiled, feeling a warm feeling in his chest. Sounds neat, doesn't it? A last name. I now have a last name. Hearing their new names, Elaine felt excited. He then turned to his sister, Mary Ann, did you hear that? We've got our last names now. Indeed, brother, his sister, Mary Ann, was much calmer in her contrast to him. The twins then looked at Emmanuel and smiled. Thank you, father. Returning to the present, Emmanuel, who was about to pull the trigger, quickly evaded. Bang! His revolver fired. However, with his reflexes, he managed to evade it in time with only a wound on his neck. Bam asterisk. Emmanuel then dropped his revolver to the ground. No. What am I doing? All of a sudden, his mind became clearer. His selfish thoughts almost made 2 children lose their new parental figure. Digging his hands deep into the soil, tears streamed down his face. Elaine. Mary Ann. Forgive me. I won't. I promise that I won't leave you two. Uttering these, Emmanuel let out his pent-up emotions. He then lifted his head and looked at the charred corpses around the plaza. Wiping his tears, he looked around for a minute before staring off into the distance. This time, he wanted to make the right choice. The next day, Emmanuel would retire from the Marechaussee Hunters. Dash. And cut. The clapperboard sounded the end of the scene and soon, the actors on stage found a breather. Good work, everyone. Furina, who had been watching the whole time, nodded her head. She then looked at Isaac. Especially you, our dear hunter. Your acting is excellent. Really. Isaac, who finally managed to take a break, wiped his tears from his face. I don't think it was that great. Nope, you can't escape this one, Monsieur Isaac. Linny, who was still wearing Elaine's costume, approached. I admit, that was some brilliant acting. I almost felt like I was Elaine himself when facing you. But isn't that the core principle of an actor? Lynette interjected. To embody their characters. Well. You aren't wrong. Linny smiled wryly at his sister's words. They're right, Monsieur Isaac. Navia, who was also watching, also joined in. You have a knack for showing raw emotions and that's not easy. No, I just channeled my inner edgelord. Isaac lampooned inwardly. He then smiled wryly. Thank you for the compliments, everyone. To be honest, you all did an excellent job too. Humph, then I suppose we'll save this take, Furina commanded the production team. She then looked at Isaac from her director's chair. You truly are great at acting. Hearing Furina's ominous compliment, Isaac got confused for a moment. He then nodded his head. Sure. Why does it feel like Furina's been watching me more than usual today? Isaac thought to himself suspiciously. I better keep my guard up. Clap asterisk. Just then, everyone heard a clap. All right, everyone. Have some water. Courtesy of the Spina di Rosala. Navia clapped her hands and announced. Freshen yourselves up and stay hydrated. Shortly after, Spina di Rosala members arrived and gave each person in the studio 1 bottle of water. Now's a good chance. Approaching Navia, Isaac spoke. Thank you, Miss Navia. Oh, and the Spina. Don't worry about it, Monsieur Isaac. Navia said as she smiled warmly. As one of the organizers of this film, it's only natural for us to do this. Well. That is true. Isaac nodded his head in agreement. Just then, after Navia spoke, a man approached her. Navia, there you are. I want to ask, however, before the man could continue speaking, he stopped midway when he noticed Isaac. Isaac, who saw the man, suddenly broke into an enigmatic smile. "Oh, did you find what I was looking for?" Navia then turned around, oblivious to Isaac's smile behind her. "It didn't bother you that much, did it, Uncle Marcel?" "No, not at all." The man named Marcel quickly regained his composure and shook his head. He then took out an envelope. "Here, just what you wanted." "Ah, thanks, Uncle Marcel." Receiving the letter, Navia thanked the older man. "I'll make sure to drop by Confrérie later." "Oh, of course, my doors will always." Although he and Navia spoke, his eyes couldn't help but deviate behind her from time to time. However, every time he did, more cold sweats ran down his back. "Welcome you." Behind Navia, the man who was quietly drinking his water was smiling devilishly at Marcel without saying anything. His deep amber eyes, coupled with that hideous smile, made it seem like he was the devil himself. In the face of such a thing, Marcel could only comply and never say anything. On the other hand, Isaac, who was watching Marcel's panic, couldn't help but entertain himself more. "Looks like my pet still knows its place." It felt great having pawns. Chapter 66, Renewed. Is there something wrong? Noticing Marcel's odd behavior, Navia's blue eyes moved and gazed at him. Having been caught, Marcel quickly composed himself and explained, "Not at all. I was merely a bit tired from walking all the way here." "Ah, that's understandable." Upon hearing this, Navia nodded her head. She then pointed in a certain direction. "Why not rest there for a minute, Uncle Marcel?" "Sure." Although Marcel said this, his eyes couldn't help but still look over to Isaac. The latter, who was sitting down on a crate and drinking a bit of water, caught his glance and smiled enigmatically. Catching this, Marcel felt a shiver run up his spine. He then quickly shook it off and looked at Navia. "That's a good idea. Excuse me." With that said, Marcel turned around and walked off, leaving Isaac and Navia alone. "His age must be catching up to him," Navia commented as she watched her uncle weakly walk away. "He's the boss of the Confrérie of Cabrières, right?" Isaac, who was smiling like a charlatan, commented. Receiving Isaac's question, Navia turned back and looked at him. She then crossed her arms and answered, "Yes, do you know him?" "How could I not?" Scoffing to himself, Isaac laughed wryly. "In the game of us merchants, bigwigs like him are well known as giants. In other words, an influential and powerful person with lots of money." Navia, who was getting the gist of where Isaac was taking the conversation, finished his sentence for him with a smile. "Am I right?" "That is correct." Isaac nodded his head. His soft melancholy smile which he always had. However, beneath this facade of a smile lies a much more sinister thought. "And my wallet?" Staring at Navia who was oblivious to his internal thoughts, Isaac's smile deepened. Isaac had long since freed Vocker from his imprisonment in the Evernight skill. However, as a price, Vocker's memories were concealed. Unless Isaac himself allows him to, he will never remember the events back in the cave or any connection to Isaac or what happened at that time. The only thing that would remain, however, is his innate fear of Isaac. Well, even if Vocker manages to remember, he won't be able to utter anything since his words would be automatically concealed by Isaac's skill. In other words, my skill really is convenient. Isaac hummed to himself as he looked at the production site. I can go and collect money from Vocker from time to time, and any memories of me would be concealed from his mind afterward. It's so convenient, I love it. He smirked to himself. Looking outside and seeing the darkening horizon, Isaac realized that it was falling into nighttime. Oh, it's time. He then looked back at Navia who was sitting beside him. Standing up, he said, I have to go now. It was nice chatting with you, Miss Navia. It's my pleasure, Navia nodded her head as she returned the gesture. Smiling, she continued speaking. Farewell, Monsieur Isaac. I bid you adieus. Isaac nodded lightly before walking away. After changing back to his clothes and leaving behind his props and costume, he finally left Poisson and headed back to his café. What an exhausting day. Having used the teleportation function to quickly return home, Isaac placed his hand on his nape and clenched his stiff neck. However, now that he returned to his haven, he can finally relax. The soft ambient light of the café, followed by the aromatic smell of pastries still lingering in the air, gave Isaac a refreshing feeling. He then raised his head and looked at the counter of the café. Smiling, he looked at the two people present. How was your day, you two? Behind the counter where Isaac was normally seen working, Lumen and Paimon can be seen working. Both of them wore a barista uniform similar to Isaac's. And yes, Paimon also has a custom-made uniform that fits her. Ah! The devil is back. Finally noticing Isaac's presence, Paimon, who was cleaning the cups with a cloth, shrieked. Devil? Surely I'm not as intimidating as before, right? Approaching the counter, Isaac scoffed. Little fairy, you can call me however you want, but let's ease the tension, all right? Oh, right. Sorry. Realizing her rudeness, Paimon apologized shortly after. Welcome back. Lumen, who was reorganizing coffee bags behind the counter, greeted Isaac. Any interesting things that happened while I was gone? Sitting down on one of the tools, Isaac asked with a calm tone. Nothing much, answered Lumen as she stored the final coffee bean bag. Though, there was a person who claims to be a kitsune that came about an hour ago. She said she's a regular and you knew her. She already met Maiko, et. Isaac didn't know if this would seriously alter the course of things, but for now, he decided to not delve too much into it. Anything else? That's about it. Lumen shook her head and answered straight to the point. Very well then, smiling to himself, Isaac summoned a bag of mora from his inventory and placed it on the counter. As agreed upon, here is your payment for today. 100,000 mora. Nothing more, nothing less. This. Looking at the bag that looked heavy just from looking at it, Paimon was at a loss for words. Paimon has never touched so much mora before. Haha, I'm sure getting this much with just one day of honest work is hard to come by. Isaac lightheartedly laughed at Paimon's words. After saying this, Isaac turned his head and looked at the clock on the wall. His deep amber eyes then looked back at Lumen. Would you look at that? It's already the end of your shift. Which means our contract is terminated, he said as he looked at her warm golden eyes. Oh. Yes. Upon realizing that their contract, which was only meant for one day, had already ended, Lumen was momentarily at a loss for words. I'm sorry. It's still hard to accept that we just got 100,000 mora in one day. It's understandable. He nodded at her as he walked near the front door of the cafe. Well then, ladies. It's been a pleasure working with you today. Hearing Isaac's words, Lumen was placed in a difficult situation. She had accepted the man's offer in hopes of befriending him and chance of asking for his support if she needed it, but instead, other than the instructions he taught them about the cafe, they had barely talked to each other. What should I do? Lumen thought to herself as her golden pupils dropped down to the floor. Should we just leave with the money? But what if we never meet this person again? Just then, while Lumen was in the middle of pondering about this matter, Isaac's voice drifted over to her ears. Although, if you two are a bit interested. Isaac, who was standing by the door, calmly walked back and returned to his seat. Placing his hand on the counter, he looked at Lumen. It was here when the deep amber eyes of the man of lies and the warm golden pupils of the personification of the stars looked at one another. One whose goal is to find their sibling, and the other wanting to soothe the souls of those who stumble upon his haven. A completely unrelated encounter yet fated. It seemed almost as if it was a reasonable development. Taking out a new paper, Isaac continued smiling softly. How about making another contract with me? You two can continue working here, but of course, your salary would lower a bit. Isaac offered to them as his eyes moved back and forth between Lumen and Paimon. However, there are many benefits to this. Not only would your salary be above the minimum wage, but you'd also get to eat leftover pastries during your shifts. He added. Moreover, you'd still have the same benefits as the previous contract. So, after finishing his offer, he extended his hand and reached out for Lumen. How about it? His eyes, which seemed lifeless, had unknowingly released a bit of spark, adding an unfounded life to his otherwise stale pupils. Lumen, on the other hand, looked at his hand hesitantly. She contemplated deeply on what she would do. But considering all of her choices, she only has one answer that she ultimately stumbled upon. Extending her hand, she reached for Isaac's hand and grasped it. Please take care of us once again. Shaking their hands, Isaac and Lumen had now renewed their contract and the latter would now continue working with him. I'm glad. Still holding Lumen's hand, Isaac smiled warmly at her. He then looked over to Paimon, who was beside Lumen. A pleasure to work with you two again. The next day. Breaking news. The Geo-Archon, Morux, was assassinated during Liu's yearly rite of descent. The main suspects right now are two travelers by the name of Lumen and Paimon who tried to flee from the scene and knocked a group of Milliliths during their escape. Isaac, who had just woken up and decided to read the newspaper, felt his mind going numb. Well, looks like my new employees will be getting a day off on their first official day on the job. Isaac lampooned as he held the newspaper in one hand and a toast in the other. Speaking of which, he then looked over to the other side of the table he was eating at. You'd make things easier for her, right? Xiao. Humph. Sitting down at the same table as him, Xiao, who was drinking a cup of tea, scoffed. I won't make promises. That's good enough for me. He smiled at the conqueror of demons. I wonder how my influence would affect the destined story. Ha! Sighing to himself internally, Isaac lampooned. He was once more amazed by his hypocrisy. So much for being a spectator. Chapter 67, A Hypocrite's Lament. The dark gloom of the night silently blanketed the nation of Fontaine, reminding all inhabitants of the hour of slumber. Meanwhile, the bright crescent moon, which hung silently in the sky, quietly watched the lives underneath it impartially. On this night, which was no different from another, however, some refused to suck *MB to the sweet allure of the night and persisted in the waking world. In Poisson. Huff. Huff. Supporting his body by leaning on the wall, Marcel grasped his chest as cold sweat dripped down his forehead profusely. He was slightly trembling and his breath was short. His eyes, on the other hand, were filled with deep unexplainable fear and dread. Those kinds of eyes were that of a dead man. Boss, are you sure you're all right? Standing behind him, a burly man asked. You haven't been able to have a decent sleep for days now. It's fine, however, contrary to the man's worry, Marcel merely waved his hand in passing. His tired face, on the other hand, betrayed his words. On a more important matter. Tell the men to secure our funds for the next synth business. How about you, boss? I'll. As Marcel spoke, his eyes slowly drifted over to his office's door. For a moment, it felt as if something was creeping inside that office he knew so well. Seeing this, Marcel swallowed his dry saliva and continued speaking, I'll do some paperwork. Right, boss. Saying this, the burly man nodded his head before turning around and leaving the hallway, leaving Marcel to his own company. Marcel, on the other hand, watched his bodyguard walk away from him in silence. He opened his mouth and wanted to say something, but he stopped midway. Help me. He wanted to scream those words, but whenever he even thought of such an act, a deep indescribable dread looked over him and it felt as if death itself was sitting on his shoulders, holding him hostage. Such dread was mentally exhausting. In the end, Marcel could only follow his innate human instincts and didn't attempt to execute his thoughts. After watching his guard leave the vicinity completely, Marcel turned around and walked to the door of his office. That normal-looking door that he was so familiar with was now looking like the jaws of a beast, waiting to devour him. Shaking, Marcel placed his hand on the doorknob and opened it. What he met was his office, the one he always knew. Nothing was out of place and everything was left as intended. After making sure nothing was wrong, Marcel entered the room and closed the door behind him. Click asterisk. He locked the door for safety purposes. Marcel then approached his desk and sat down on the chair behind it. Upon seating, he sighed heavily. With an exhausted face, he uttered, "Just what is happening to me? I haven't been acting the same since last week." He clenched his hands and spoke with frustration and tiredness in his voice. What in the world is happening? Perhaps retribution. Suddenly, amidst the darkness of the night that surrounded him, a voice answered his questions. The voice had a heavy tone, but a somewhat serene aspect enlaced with them, evoking a sense of rest. It was as if the owner of the voice was well versed in a requiem. Hearing this, Marcel panicked and wanted to stand up, however, he found it difficult to stand up. When he looked down, he saw his legs trembling violently, preventing him from doing anything. What? What a comical sight! The voice, who answered Marcel earlier, scoffed as if amused. You know, with the way you act. It was then that Marcel saw the source of the voice. Emerging from the shadows, a man draped in black appeared. The darkness around him distorted as if the shadows themselves made way for him. The man wore a white long-sleeved shirt coupled with a black vest along with a black two-buttoned frock coat on top. Additionally, he was also wearing black trousers and a pair of shoes that glistened in the night. And, to finish it off, he had a mask that covered half of his lower face and golden spectacles over his eyes. "Why you?" Seeing the man suddenly appear, panic spread more on Marcel's face as he reached for his revolver in his drawer. "Who are you?" "German." The man answered directly. His dark gloomy eyes then looked directly at Marcel's eyes. He then continued. "The first hunter." The what? Hearing the man's name and what he calls himself, Marcel was momentarily taken aback. However, he soon retorted, "What do you want from me?" "Nothing." The man answered. "I just want to leave an impression." "An impression?" Yet. In the next second, before Marcel could even take out the revolver he was holding, the man had already appeared in front of him with a revolver directed right to his face. It all happened in an instant. The man barely even moved. "Hey!" Seeing the barrel of the gun, Marcel was momentarily unable to do anything as he stared with fright. "Now I will show you mercy." The man spoke again, resting his finger on the trigger. "You will die, forget the dream, and awake under the morning sun. You will be freed from this terrible hunter's dream. Fear the blood." With all things said, the man finally pulled the trigger without hesitation. Bang! Before Marcel could even retaliate, the man pulled the trigger and the brass bullet shot out from the barrel, launching directly towards Marcel's forehead. Marcel felt the metallic feeling of the bullet plunging deep into his flesh, penetrating his cranium and sinking deeper into his head. Throughout this seemingly slow motion of time, Marcel felt this pain in real time. The last thing Marcel saw was the man named German's indifferent eyes looking at him like a pitiful person. With that, his vision blacked out. "Ah!" Marcel shouted in fright as he stood up. His whole body was covered in sweat and his heart was thumping violently inside his chest. His breath was short and he felt like he would pass out at any moment. Waking up from a nightmare, Marcel looked at his body for a few seconds with a frightened expression before looking at his surroundings. He wanted to stand up and call his guard, but before he could do so, he stopped midway. His face was now riddled with fear and confusion. What was I doing again? Meanwhile, in the streets of the court of Fontaine, within the darkness of the city, a man emerged from the shadows. Isaac, who was wearing his German identity, looked at the crescent moon that was currently present in the sky. His eyes couldn't help but focus on it for a few moments as he fell into deep contemplation. He had just collected money from Marcel. And seeing that he had the time, he decided to play with him for a bit. "I wonder, would this be enough?" he thought to himself as he dusted off his clothes. "I know the future and know the countless atrocities Marcel would commit." However, Isaac's eyes then glistened under the moonlight. Even without me, the fate of his victims was already set in stone. Isaac was no upholder of justice and he acknowledges this sinister trait of his. But even so, he never actively engaged in malicious acts. As such, faced with someone like Marcel, Isaac felt like he had the choice to save many lives. Despite such thoughts, he ultimately sided with how things were originally met. Staring blankly up in the night sky, a heavy sigh escaped Isaac's mouth. He then muttered with a soft voice full of resentment. A selfish hypocrite. He detested how he allowed himself to allow Marcel to live, but feared his death would overly complicate what he already knew his main trump card. For his own selfish interests, more women would die in Marcel's experiments. Perhaps this is the other side of Serenity. Closing his eyes, Isaac's face showed regret before turning around and entering the shadows once more, disappearing in the night. Death that follows silence. On this night, only one person in the entirety of Fontaine was unable to have a proper sleep due to a prior nightmare. And it would prove to continue to eat away at his health. At the very least, this is what Isaac could give to the victims to ease his guilt by slowly torturing the man who killed them for his selfish desires. From one lunatic to another. Chapter 68, Sign of Peace. "Alright, everyone. Let's cut it here." In the film set, Furina spoke out loud as she sat up from her director's seat. Not far from her, Isaac, Linny, and Lynette were seen in their respective costumes. The film, titled A Hunter's Remorse, was proceeding smoothly. So far, everything has been up to satisfaction in Furina's eyes. A couple of days had already passed since the production started, and the deadline was not far away. But to make the film good, Furina didn't push the schedule down everyone's throats and told them to go at their own pace. This in turn gave her a satisfactory performance from the main actors. Hearing the break, Isaac took off his mask and retreated from the set. As he did so, he slowly unbuttoned his overshirt to breathe in more. "You sure are sweating buckets, Monsieur Isaac." Just then, Linny's voice drifted over to Isaac, catching his attention. Holding a pair of water bottles, Linny offered one to Isaac with a soft smile. "Here, I thought you might need it." "Ah. Thanks." Receiving the water, Isaac thanked Linny with a light nod. Taking the water, Isaac rested the tip on his lips and slowly drank it. Soon, the mildly cold sensation of liquid passing through his throat instantly refreshed him. "Ha! Just what I needed." Finishing his drink, Isaac took the bottle off his mouth and wiped his mouth. He then looked at Linny with gratitude. "Thanks, Linny. I really needed that." "It's no problem at all." Smiling softly, Linny nodded his head. He then placed his hands behind his back. "By the way, do you have the time to chat, Monsieur Isaac?" Sure." Still looking at Linny, Isaac shrugged his shoulders. He then looked around for a moment before looking back at Linny. He then pointed at the group of chairs nearby with his index finger. "Why don't we talk over there?" "Sure." Linny agreed with a light nod. Reaching an agreement, the two then walked over to the set of chairs and sat down not far from one another. "So, what do you want to talk about?" Taking off most of his accessories, Isaac asked Linny with a curious tone. "Well, this is if you don't mind answering." Linny spoke with a hesitant voice as if gauging out Isaac's reaction. "You see, I don't mean to pry into your personal life, but why did you decide to join this film?" Hearing this question, Isaac's mind raced as he quickly tried to formulate what Linny was trying to do. After pondering for a few moments, Isaac let out a soft exhale as he looked at Linny with warm nonchalant eyes. "Isn't it the same as you? I got roped in by Lady Furina." Is that so?" Hearing Isaac's answer, Linny fell into contemplation as he grasped his chin. He then looked back again at Isaac. "Is it because you're, well, a friend?" "A friend, hey?" Hearing this remark, Isaac almost let out a good laugh. "Well, that's partially true. Though, she does seem to see me more of a servant more than anything." "Then, did she promise you something after this film?" It was then that Linny shifted the topic. Isaac caught notice of this sudden change and fell silent. "Not subtle enough, Linny." If it were any other person, they might have already answered Linny's question in the next second. But since Isaac was always cautious around the Fatui, he never once let his guard around them. Isaac, however, found an opportunity. "If you present me this kind of opportunity, how could I refuse?" "She did." Isaac nodded his head as his gaze left Linny and landed upon the figure of Furina in the distance. Watching her instruct the production crew, Isaac's gaze turned softer as he spoke gently. "And honestly, what she promised me was childish. But I still accepted it." "And that promise is?" Linny saw the window of opportunity in Isaac's words and decided to probe in. Turning his head, Isaac scoffed. He then placed his finger on his mouth and mimicked the certain father of the house for the hearth. "A secret? Is that so?" Upon hearing Isaac's response, a bittersweet smile emerged from Linny's mouth. "It is as they say, you really do love to put people on the edge." "A fun habit of mine." Isaac chuckled lightly. However, his eyes then quickly changed and looked at Linny. With swiftness, he quickly counterattacked. "By the way, according to proper reciprocation, shouldn't I ask a question back?" "I suppose so." Linny nodded his head as he leaned back in his chair. Closing his right eye, his left eye looked at Isaac. "What do you want to talk about, Monsieur Isaac?" "Similar to you, really," Isaac answered as his gaze lingered upon Linny. With a composed tone, he continued. "I want to know. What did Furina promise to give you after all this?" Linny fell silent for a few moments as a wry smile hung on his face. After a few moments, he couldn't help but chuckle dryly and looked at Isaac. "Are you sure you want to know?" "Similar to yours, it's a pretty childish reason." "I'm all ears, my guy." Isaac smirked as he leaned back his head over his chair and looked at Linny. "Well, it's a little embarrassing to say, but..." As Linny spoke, he couldn't help but hide his face as a red tinge spread from his face. His expression then turned shy. "It's To let us freely perform around Fontaine for free as well as give out toys the magic packets we made to our audiences. That's actually a cute and considerate promise. Isaac formed a smile after listening to Linny. If not for the fact. But of course, how could he not see the silver lining? This is obviously a way so that the House of the Hearth can go anywhere in Fontaine unobstructed. Isaac deduced quickly in his mind in a fraction of a moment. Is this how they managed to give out those magic packets at the start of the Fontaine Archon quest without any hindrances from the authorities? I wonder. His eyes then focused on the magician beside him. Is this a decision from Linny or from her? His mind then drifted over to a certain woman with ominous crossed red eyes. Isaac doesn't harbor any malice towards the knave. On the contrary, he sees her as a potential ally. If not for the fact that the two of them would try to make use of one another for some kind of benefit. The knave's cause is very substantial to the fate of Fontaine, and there's no reason to be antagonistic towards her and the hearth. As Isaac thought of this, his deep amber eyes couldn't help but close while leaning upwards. My main quest of forming good relationships with her is actually a great thing on my part. After laying out all of his worries, Isaac let out a small sigh of relief. Soon, a carefree smile spread on his lips. Yet, I shouldn't be too malicious towards her and the hearth. Moreover, it's highly unlikely that she would even find any worth in a puny cafe owner like me to make use of. He reassured himself. I mean, surely at most she'd only glance at me. Right. Looking back at Linny, he spoke with an amused tone. You know what? I'm actually touched by what you're doing. Yeah, I've decided. Making up his mind, Isaac stood up from his chair and looked at Linny who was sitting down not far from him. I'd like to support Furina's initial promise with you. He said as his deep amber eyes swept past Linny. Hearing Isaac's statement, Linny was momentarily dumbfounded. However, he soon collected himself. Looking at Isaac, Linny spoke with slight disbelief. Monsieur Isaac, what do you mean? I'm sure creating those magic packets cost a bit, didn't it? Isaac gestured with his index finger as he spoke. Well, to show my support, I'd like to financially sponsor this endeavor of yours. I have a lot of money to spend, after all. Remembering Marcel, perhaps it was still out of guilt of letting the serial killer live. Isaac wanted to make use of his money for the greater good and make up for the lunatic's crimes. Marcel's drug trade network was vast and deeply rooted in Fontaine and has been prominent for the past decade. He was also connected to a lot of people with power. However, now he was in Isaac's hands, and what power the former had was now the latter's. In other words, all those corrupt powers were now at Isaac's disposal through Marcel. How about it? Extending his hand to Linny, Isaac smiled softly as he spoke firmly. There were a lot of things to reap from this deal, and very few to lose. To Isaac, who was all about profits, as long as it benefited him and his cafe, he would take hold of this chance. This. Looking at Isaac's thick firm hand which he extended out to Linny for a shake, Linny hesitated for a moment. In that short moment, various thoughts flower inside Linny's mind, and, after not but a few moments later, he lifted his hand and took Isaac's. On behalf of my siblings, as well as our father, I'd like to sincerely thank you, monsieur. Linny smiled genuinely as he spoke with gratuity. You would be of great help. +5. That works. Seeing the sudden notification, Isaac was surprised to know that he could still induce Serenity even outside his cafe. It's unexpected, but I'll accept it. Looking at Linny's face of gratitude, somewhere deep inside Isaac's heart softened. He knew he was only mending his guilt, but this act of helping others made him feel butterflies. See that, knave? Shaking Linny's hand, Isaac's warm smile softened more. This is my sign of peace. Then, pleasure working with you, Linny. With this, his relationship with the House of the Heart was solidified. It won't be too long now until he gets the knave's attention and perhaps meets with her to finish his main quest. However, unbeknownst to Isaac, someone had been watching him since earlier. Not far away, sitting down on the director's seat, a certain greyish white-haired person watched Isaac interact with Linny with smiles and laughter. Seeing them have fun, the woman's face sunk with suspicion as well as another unknown nasty emotion. What could you and Linny be talking about to look so happy? Her heterochromatic eyes glistened with suspicion. She needed to move now. If she wanted to know more about the man similar to her, a liar whose mask was thick. ******. A/N, it is as you have guessed. Isaac is now the Hearth's financial supporter. Yeah, that's what I meant. Chapter 69, Tender is the Night One. After another successful day at Furina's film, however, Isaac, who felt more tired than usual, decided to return home as soon as possible. He didn't know why, but today's play just took a lot out of him. Of course, he didn't dare to show it to anyone else and hid it behind an amicable smile. After leaving the set, he quickly took the boat to the court of Fontaine, and after arriving, he didn't stay idle and immediately got off. As Isaac walked along the streets of Fontaine, he noticed that the street lamps were starting to light up. However, that was not the only thing he noticed. Someone's following me. Deciding not to look around, Isaac sighed lightly. Blinking twice, he clicked his tongue. Who is it now? TCH. I have no time for this. Isaac was tired and irritated. This was unlike his usual behavior. I'll ignore them for now. Sparing no energy to his stalker, Isaac decided to play it safe and walk among crowds to reach his cafe. Please, I just want to rest. However, it seems like things just weren't going in Isaac's favor today. The stalker never got off his back. Seriously. Finally arriving at the entrance to his cafe, Isaac felt more annoyed than ever. With a firm voice, he spoke loudly enough for his stalker to hear. Let's stop playing hide and seek, shall we? Although Isaac didn't see it, he noticed the jolt that the other party did. Turning his head, his deep amber eyes full of frustration looked at the spot where his stalker was hiding. Please, come out. If you have something to say, just say it. I'm not in the mood right now. His stalker didn't leave the spot they had previously despite Isaac's words. They remained in the shadows. Seriously. Isaac was just about to call out the stalker again when suddenly, the figure finally appeared. Furina. Despite her wearing a hood, Isaac still easily recognized her. After all, her grayish-white hair was all too familiar to him. It seems that I came at a bad time. Furina, who jumped out from the shadows wearing a cloak with a hood on, looked at Isaac with her heterochromatic eyes. You seem to be in a bad mood. No, no. Lifting his hand to caress his temples, Isaac shook his head. Just a bit tired, that's all. By the way. However, he soon looked back at her with curiosity. Why were you stalking me all this time? What? Stalking. Surprised that Isaac noticed her earlier, Furina was taken aback. However, she quickly composed herself. I was not. I was checking up on you. Yes, I noticed you looked rather miserable today. And I, on my esteemed self, took it upon myself to go and check up on you to see if there's something wrong. She added with her usual vibrant smile. However, to Isaac, her words caused a bit of a stir in his mind. With just those words, he fell into serious contemplation. That isn't right. Furina, you. Why are you acting like that? Isaac knew Furina very well. To strangers, she puts on a fake flamboyant bravado to try and mask her true self. But throughout the time they have been together, Isaac is sure that he is no longer just a stranger to her. However, what she said just now broke that image in his mind. A slight frown, a rare sight in Isaac's face, surfaced. No. I must be imagining things. Yet. I must be just really tired. Is that so? Trying his best to put on a smile, Isaac's tiredness got the best of him, and only managed to conjure a stale smile. I'm touched. Thank you, Lady Furina. Hehe, it's nothing at all. Receiving Isaac's response, a small sigh of relief escaped Furina's mouth. As the god of this nation, it's only natural for me to take notice of my beloved subject's emotions. Once more, that feeling of Furina placing him in the category of a stranger crept up Isaac. Normally, Isaac wouldn't have minded it and brushed it off. But today, he just couldn't help but notice the underlying meanings of each word uttered by Furina. What's happening? Isaac's eyes deepened as he thought to himself. Suddenly, he felt a throbbing feeling from the back of his head. Ugh! Now a headache. Today was really just a bad day. Shaking his head lightly, Isaac turned around and grabbed the doorknob. Do you want to get some drinks inside? Your treat. Furina said jokingly, knowing Isaac's greedy nature. Waiting for his response, Furina humorously thought to herself, knowing him, he would surely say something humorous or brush it off. She had known the way Isaac acted all too well, and she was sure that he would do it. No. However, what came out broke her expectations. He neither joked about it nor made a sarcastic remark like he usually does. What came out instead was a simple and cold answer, devoid of any life. She knew he was tired, but this wasn't part of her expectations. Please, come on inside. Opening the doorknob, Isaac continued speaking coldly. I'll go brew up your usual drink. Still in shock of Isaac's strange behavior, Furina followed along Isaac and entered the cafe. However, during this time, her eyes couldn't leave his figure. What's happening? She thought to herself, clearly sensing Isaac's different behavior today. To change this much just with a bad day. Truth be told, the reason she followed Isaac in the first place was to observe him in secret. To prove her theories about his connection to the masked clown, she wanted to learn more about her supposed friend. And to not make things suspicious, she decided to act like how she acted in front of others. In this way, she can approach him naturally. But what he displayed had subverted her image of him. Why isn't he smiling? It felt odd for her to see Isaac, who was always smiling, frown. I'm sure of it. This isn't just about a bad day. Just what could he be upset with? Furina thought to herself as she found a seat to sit down on. She then rested her face on her palm. Well, until I find out what kind of connection he has to the masked clown, I'll just... Furina then stopped mid-sentence. She then contemplated for a few moments. Afterward, she nodded to herself. Right. To make this investigation faster, I should act as friendly as possible to ask him questions. Furina's eyes glanced down as she thought of this. How poetic. We used to investigate cases together, but now... She then glanced over to the door leading to the kitchen where she faintly heard Isaac walking in. It is me who's investigating, my assistant. Looking at her hands, her eyes squinted with faint dejection. In the first place, this would have never even happened if he told me the truth. Dash. Meanwhile, inside Isaac's kitchen. Just what the hell is happening? Supporting himself by leaning on the wall, Isaac silently cursed under his breath. He was now sweating profusely. Extreme fatigue, dizziness, and a throbbing headache. System. Calling forth his system, Isaac wanted to check his status to see if anything was out of place regarding his health. Sure enough, he quickly caught sight of an anomaly. Current status, cursed, Evernight adverse effects. The Evernight skill's adverse effects. Seeing this, Isaac's eyes widened. He then clenched his teeth. When did that happen? Wait. Just then, something came to his mind. Is it Marcel? Now that I think about it, I've been utilizing the Evernight skill's dream ability lately to give nightmares and control Marcel. Isaac thought to himself, connecting the dots. Could it be because of this? He knew too well about the consequences of using his Evernight skill. As a skill that transcends authorities, it was bound to cause adverse effects for its user. Huff. Thankfully. Looking back at his status, Isaac saw a silver living. The adverse effect status only lasts for 8 hours. I should be fine by tomorrow morning. He couldn't even let out a sigh of relief due to his current predicament. I should refrain from toying with Marcel for the time being. SSS*. Looking at the boiling water not far from him, Isaac blinked twice. Yet. Let's go meet Furina for now. Picking out 2 cups for himself and Furina, Isaac filled them with their respective favorite tea. Soon, he went back out. Dash. Here, standing beside Furina's table, Isaac placed down her teacup. Enjoy. Merci beaucoup. Furina spoke fluently as she looked back at Isaac with a satisfied smile. Oui. Isaac replied with a monotone voice, trying his best to distract himself from his current poor condition. Picking up his tea, he hoped that its calming effects could somehow reduce his throbbing headache. What are you doing? Just then, Furina's voice drifted over to his ears. Why are you drinking while standing up? I just thought that mortals shouldn't be that close to gods. Isaac, still aware of Furina reverting to her bravado, decided to act accordingly. What? Upon hearing this, Furina showed a baffled expression. You must be joking? We have known each other for quite a while. It suffices to say that we are no longer just strangers, right? So, why don't you sit down? Right. Still unaware of her true motives, Isaac followed along, hoping to see where this would go. Sitting down on the table, he felt his head throb again, getting a bit stronger with each time. He then placed his hand on his temples and caressed them. Ha! It seems like your bad condition is worse than I thought. Noticing his behavior rather quickly, Furina commented. Are you sure you're alright? It's fine. Isaac nodded his head. He couldn't even pull up his signature smile. Just a bit of. However, before he could continue speaking, his head throbbed more. Coupled with the sudden increase in fatigue, he suddenly collapsed to the table. Thankfully, he managed to hold the table to prevent himself from fully falling. Ugh! He then silently groaned under his breath under the pain. Hey! Are you all right? Seeing his sudden actions, Furina quickly stood up and helped him. She hadn't expected that his condition would escalate to such a level. Approaching him by his side, she held his body to support him as she looked at his eyes. Come on, let's bring you to the hospital. However, Isaac didn't answer her. Instead, he opened one eye, letting his deep amber eyes be seen by her. Seeing his eyes, Furina didn't know why, but she felt like his eyes were more than what they seemed. And inside those troubled eyes, it seemed like Isaac was thinking of something. Breathing heavily, what came out soon were words Furina hoped he would never have said. Furina. Just what am I to you? It was a night of lies and honesty. Chapter 70, Tender is the Night too. Tud asterisk. TSS asterisk. Not long after it had turned dark outside, dark clouds had already gathered. Naturally, only a downpour would be a result of this phenomenon. In the nation of Hydro, such a phenomenon was an everyday occurrence. But tonight, the rain seemed to carry a much heavier tune. Furina. Looking at Isaac, who was struggling to hold himself together, Furina's eyes became complicated as she listened to his words. Just what am I to you? That. What are you saying? Unsure of what Isaac just said, Furina tried to reason out his words. She then stood up and said, Isaac, this is no time for your jokes. You're seriously not feeling well. Please. However, despite her words, Isaac remained fixated on his question. His words were still faltering as he spoke due to the pain he was experiencing. Just answer. You. Looking at Isaac's troubled expression, Furina pursed her lips as she tried to think of a way to help him. Regarding Isaac's question, Furina has no trouble answering it. To her, he was a wonderful mystery. Someone she knows she can count on and be part of her performance as a fellow actor. He was someone who valued his customers' satisfaction, yet also craved their money. A complete dichotomy. He was someone who held secrets she wanted to uncover. It was the reason for her visit today. Finally, he was someone who she could have fun with, without breaking her act. In other words, someone who she can hang out with, despite her role. Furina hesitated for a moment as she contemplated in her mind all that she could answer. Why are you asking this? Closing her heterochromatic eyes, Furina hesitated. You're a hypocrite. A fool. She started describing words that fully suited Isaac. But you're also a compassionate person. You're my most liked servant. As she thought of this word, she became even more hesitant. You're reliable and know me so well. You're someone who carries secrets that you keep from me. She clenched his hand as she thought of this. You're so full of contradictions. With this thought, her grip on his hand became tighter. There are a lot of things to describe who you are and what you mean to me. Were you just a servant I really liked? A colleague? A friend? Or? Remembering their adventures as well as the short time they spent together, Furina just realized how complicated her relationship with Isaac was. Remembering the first time they met, Furina found it funny. In the first place, you were the one who made advances to me. You're not like the others. You're different. She then compared Isaac to her circle of friends with whom she wasn't even honest. Around you, I don't act my role as the Hydro Archon, but rather just Furina. At that moment, a series of scenes with Isaac played in her mind. In them, he was always smiling. That dumb, warm smile that always hung up his face was what she always saw. She knew his smile was just a facade similar to hers, but somehow, deep inside her mind, she knew the cause for his warm smile was genuine. His conviction to bring peace to his customers was all known by her too well. Finally, after remembering all that had transpired between them, Furina finally made a firm answer. Holding his hand with both of hers, she spoke softly with naught but gentleness. What soon followed was a genuine warm smile akin to his. You are my special someone. Of all the words she could think of, this was what best suited him. He was unique in her eyes, a wondrous mystery of which she couldn't help but be curious. Yet he was also a mystery she must be wary of. Someone who she knows is hiding a secret, which is why she must investigate further. Actors know each other best. And in Isaac, she sees herself a person wearing a thick facade. As such, when asked what she thought of the man in front of her. Even when you act like a jerk at times. Or when you tease me when you have the chance. Soon, her eyes moistened up a little. It's you. Bringing her hand close to Isaac and holding his face, she spoke with gentleness. Her heterochromatic shined with a faint light as she looked at him. Despite everything. It's still you. She didn't know when it happened, but small amounts of water had appeared and moistened the area around her eyes, highlighting her eyes. Upon hearing her answer, Isaac, who was having trouble keeping himself together, shut his eyes for a few moments. Seeing Furina's current expression, Isaac felt a faint pinch in his heart. Such an unfamiliar feeling was different from the usual bitter feeling he previously had. A special someone. Amidst the torrent of pain brought about by the adverse effects of skill, Isaac looked at Furina with all the strength he could muster. Ha! What am I doing? Isaac shuddered. Please. Don't give me that look. Looking at Furina's worried eyes, Isaac regretted his previous actions. From the start, Isaac's goal had always been clear: to give people the tranquility they deserve. As such, upon seeing Furina, whom he wanted to help achieve peace of mind above all worry about him, Isaac felt guilty. I should be making you smile. He thought with remorse. His deep amber eyes, which were half closed, then looked at Furina. Because I promised. It was only this time that Isaac discovered his system's nefarious scheme. Upon giving Isaac the quest to serve Furina, it had essentially made Isaac's fate bound to be attached to Furina. In other words, how ironic. If Isaac was feeling normal right now, he would have conjured up a faint smile upon this realization. A hypocrite. Upholding an oath. But if it's for her. His eyes then aligned with Furina's eyes. Then I wouldn't have minded. Lifting his hand, Isaac, albeit shaking, reached up and held Furina's hand, which was holding his face. With a faint voice, Isaac managed to conjure a faint smile. Thank you. Your words have never felt so reassuring. Thank you. His grip on her hand then tightened, pressing it closer to his face. I'm sorry. For the way I acted today. I'm sorry. I just... HNNGH. Isaac wanted to comfort her, but his symptoms were still persisting. Ha! That's enough. Seeing him try to be coy, Furina raised her voice. Just for tonight, Isaac, please stop being pretentious. That. Hearing Furina's remark about him, Isaac felt like he was stabbed in the heart. In all fairness, she was right though. I won't accept any excuses. For some reason, Furina went from worrying for Isaac to seemingly scolding him. She then sighed faintly. I have a feeling that you'd reject the notion of going to the hospital again, so... Furina hesitated for a moment before continuing. Let me take care of you. Until you get better. That isn't necessary. Listening to Furina, Isaac's eyes quickly widened as he tried to reject her. He then tried to stand up. I'm fine, Furina. I just need a bit of rest. Humph, and here I thought you were as proficient in acting as I was. Furina scoffed. She then pressed him back down to his seat. Then, let me rephrase this. I will accompany and help you. This is a command, not a request, from your god. She declared firmly with her usual bravado as her face got closer to Isaac. However, for some reason, Isaac felt that it wasn't an act but a genuine gesture. Got it. I get it. I get it. Seeing how resolute she was, Isaac felt that there was no escaping her now. So. Furina. At that moment, a quiet atmosphere descended upon them. For a few moments, both of them didn't speak and merely looked at each other in the eyes. Isaac, who was lying weakly on his chair, and Furina pinning him down made this scene look rather more awkward. Yet, as the two looked at each other, Isaac, who was no longer acting coy, underwent several thoughts as he looked at her. He then subconsciously complimented her. You really are, as beautiful as the day I met you. Scenes played in his head of when they first met, how she managed to sense his negative thoughts about her. From that moment on, everything changed. As he kept remembering, all he could remember with her was her beautiful and lively smile. Whether it was fake or not mattered not, as it didn't change its essence. She was beautiful whether she acted or not. From one actor to another, he truly complimented her. After uttering those words, Isaac lifted his hand and placed it on her face, holding her. By this time, he had long stopped referring to her by her titles and merely called her by her name. Furina. You fool! Sensing what Isaac was about to do, a troubled expression emerged from Furina's face. However, the red tinge spreading across her face proved otherwise. What you're about to do is heresy beyond degree. Do you understand what you're doing? Even I might not be able to save you from this. Yet, Isaac spoke calmly. It was as if his throbbing headache, which seemed like needles piercing his brain, had vanished. What was now present was just his thoughts about her. I'm about to do something I can't go back from now on. But since it's you, I don't care much about that. Right now. Saying something like that. Upon hearing Isaac, Furina's eye twitched as she looked at him. Her heterochromatic eyes focused on his deep amber eyes. You really are problematic. I need to look after you more in the future to prevent you from doing this kind of thing again. I'll look forward to it. Idiot. After uttering those words, Isaac leaned his face closer and reached for Furina. As for the latter, she closed her eyes as she hesitated. This was, after all, her first experience after 500 years. Psu**. However, what followed soon was a small peck on the lips by Isaac as if a tease. That's. Realizing what he had done, Furina looked at him, infuriated. You can't be serious. Just testing the waters. Smiling faintly, Isaac, amid pain, still managed to find the chance to tease her. Well then, let's get serious, shall we? Humph. Do it properly this time. Yes, my lady. NNGH**. Sure enough, this time, Isaac went on the full attack and kissed her slowly and passionately. It was here when Furina became bold and climbed up and sat on Isaac. Isaac, who was surprised by her sudden action, couldn't help but comment. How daring of you, my lady! Shut up! Holding Isaac's head, Furina, who was flushed red, continued with the session with her eyes closed from embarrassment. As for Isaac, seeing the moment, he decided to play along and placed his hand behind her waist and the other behind her head, hugging her tightly. What then ensued was a few moments of passionate silence between the two. **A/N. After so long, I finally managed to find images that look 98% like Isaac. Just remove the glasses. Check this paragraph e comments to see.
Thanks for listening.